In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
The Imperium of Man stands as humanity's last bulwark against a universe that desires nothing more than its complete annihilation. Faith is its shield, hatred its sword, and ignorance its armor against the horrors that lurk beyond the stars. But what happens when another human civilization, one that still believes in democracy, negotiation, and the fundamental goodness of sentient beings, crashes into this nightmare? The answer would be written in blood, fire, and the ashes of idealism. The transition was wrong. Admiral Wolf Yularen felt it in his bones the moment the Resolute lurched out of hyperspace. The familiar blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel didn't collapse into the expected starfield. Instead, reality seemed to tear, and the Republic Star Destroyer emerged into a void that screamed wrongness at every sensor array. "Report!" Yularen barked, gripping the command rail as the deck shuddered beneath his boots. "Sir, hyperspace motivators are offline. Complete system failure across the fleet," his sensor officer reported, voice tight with controlled panic. "Navigation computers can't establish a position. The stars, Admiral, the star charts don't match anything in Republic records." Yularen's jaw tightened. Around the Resolute, 17 other Republic vessels had emerged from the catastrophic hyperspace failure. 3 Venator-class Star Destroyers, 8 Acclamator-class assault ships, 4 Consular-class cruisers, and 2 medical frigates. The entire task force that had been en route to reinforce the Outer Rim's sieges now floated in an unknown system, cut off from everything they knew. "Get me General Skywalker," Yularen ordered. Minutes later, Anakin Skywalker strode onto the bridge, his Padawan Ahsoka Tano close behind. The young Jedi Knight's presence normally brought confidence to the crew, but today, his face was troubled, almost haunted. "Admiral," Anakin said quietly, "we need to talk. Something's very wrong with the Force here." Before Yularen could respond, Ahsoka gasped, her hand flying to her head. Her montrals twitched, and her blue eyes went wide with horror. "Master, I can feel..." Millions of voices, screaming, suffering. It's like the Force itself is drowning in pain. Anakin steadied her with a hand on her shoulder, but Yularen could see the Jedi's own discomfort. "I feel it too, Snips. It's like there's a wound in reality itself. Massive, consuming, and it's everywhere." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the negotiator. General Kenobi reports the same hyperspace failure. He's requesting an immediate command conference." Yularen nodded grimly. "Establish a holo-conference with all ship commanders. We need to..." "Contact!" the sensor officer shouted. "Multiple vessels emerging from..." "Sir, they're not using hyperspace. They're appearing from some kind of spatial rift. Energy signatures are completely foreign, designating as unknown hostiles." The main view screen flickered to life, and Yularen felt his blood run cold. The ships that emerged from swirling, reality-bending portals were nothing like the elegant vessels of the Republic, or even the angular brutality of separatist warships. These were Gothic nightmares, massive cathedrals of metal and stone floating in the void. Their hulls adorned with towering spires, statuary, and what appeared to be flame-belching gargoyles. Each vessel was kilometers long, dwarfing even the mighty Venator-class destroyers. The largest, a behemoth that defied comprehension, bore the image of a two-headed eagle, its wings spread across the prow in gold and crimson. Gun decks ran the length of its hull like the teeth of some ancient predator. "Sir, we're being hailed," the communications officer reported. "Audio only," The signal is primitive. Vox transmission, heavily encrypted, but our computers are breaking it down. Put it through, Yularen commanded. Static crackled across the bridge speakers, followed by a voice that sounded like gravel scraped across iron. The language was unfamiliar, yet somehow the Republic's translation matrices began parsing it into basic. Unknown vessels. You have entered the domain of the God Emperor of mankind. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed as heretics and Xenos filth. You have 30 seconds to comply. The bridge fell silent. Ahsoka looked at Anakin in confusion. God Emperor? Master, what are they talking about? Anakin's hand had unconsciously moved to his lightsaber. I don't know, Snips, but I've got a bad feeling about this. Admiral Yularen straightened his uniform and moved to the communication station. He'd conducted first contact protocols dozens of times during the Clone Wars, negotiating with neutral systems and establishing diplomatic relations. This would be no different. Open a channel, he ordered. This is Admiral Wolf Yularen of the Galactic Republic Star Destroyer Resolute. We come in peace and request parley. Our fleet has experienced a catastrophic navigation failure and requires assistance. We mean no hostility and seek only to understand our current location and establish peaceful relations. The response came after a long, tense silence. The Galactic Republic does not exist in Imperial records. Your vessels bear no recognized Imperial or Xenos signatures. The Inquisition has been notified. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Resistance will be met with immediate extermination. Yularen's diplomatic smile faded. I'm afraid we cannot comply with an unconditional boarding by unknown forces. However, we would be willing to send a diplomatic envoy to your flagship under standard parley conditions. There is no parley with the unidentified. There is only compliance or death. You have 20 seconds. On the tactical display, the massive Imperial vessels were moving into attack formation. Weapon batteries were coming online, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Each of the Gothic ships bristled with armaments that made Republic turbo lasers look like small arms by comparison. Anakin stepped forward, his presence radiating tension. Admiral, those ships, I can feel something from them. Rage. Fanaticism. They're not bluffing. 15 seconds, sir, the weapons officer reported, his hand hovering over the defensive systems. Shields are at full power, but those vessels, their weapons profile is beyond our database parameters. Yularen had faced separatist fleets, pirate armadas, and hostile planetary defenses. He'd always found a way to negotiate, to find common ground, to prevent bloodshed when possible. But looking at those cathedral ships with their burning heraldry and Gothic brutality, he realized with cold certainty that he was facing something entirely different. A civilization that had forgotten how to talk. All ships, full defensive posture, Yularen commanded. Shields to maximum. Charge all turbo-laser batteries, but do not fire unless fired upon. Helm, plot an evasive course that keeps us out of their weapon range. And get me General Kenobi. Now. The hologram of Obi-Wan Kenobi flickered to life. The Jedi Master's bearded face composed but concerned. Admiral, I take it you've made contact with our new neighbors? They're giving us 20 seconds to surrender unconditionally or be destroyed, General. Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. How uncivilized. I don't suppose they'd be interested in a civilized discussion over tea. I don't think they know what tea is, General. A pity. Obi-Wan's expression hardened. Then I suggest we show them that the Republic doesn't surrender to threats. Defensive formation Theta 7. We'll make them work for it if they want to fight. The countdown hit 0, and the Imperium of Man opened fire. The void erupted in fury. Macro cannons, weapons that hurled shells the size of Republic gunships, blazed from the Imperial broadsides in rippling salvos. Each projectile was a small starship unto itself, propelled by chemical explosives and guided by crude targeting matrices that compensated for their lack of precision with overwhelming volume. Hundreds of shells crossed the darkness between the fleets, and where they struck with the force of orbital bombardments. The Resolute's shields flared brilliant blue as the first impacts hammered home. Admiral Yularen gripped the command rail as the deck bucked beneath him, damage reports already flooding in from multiple sections. "Shields holding at 73%, the defensive coordinator shouted. "But sir, those aren't energy weapons, they're solid projectiles. Our shields aren't optimized for kinetic impact at this scale." "Return fire, all batteries," Yularen commanded. "Target their weapon emplacements, helm, evasive pattern Aurek 5. The Resolute's turbo lasers lanced out in brilliant red streams, coherent energy beams that could vaporize droid starfighters and cut through separatist cruisers. They struck the lead Imperial vessel, a cruiser identified by its transponder as the Sword of Retribution. And Yularen watched in disbelief as the energy dissipated across layered void shields, barely scorching the armor beneath. "Direct hits, minimal damage," the weapons officer reported, his voice edged with panic. "Sir, their shielding technology is absorbing our turbo laser fire like it's nothing." Anakin moved to the tactical display, his eyes scanning the battlefield with a warrior's instinct. "Look at their armor plating. It's meters thick, primitive, but effective. Our turbo lasers are designed for precision strikes against lighter vessels. We need concentrated fire. All ships, focus fire protocols." Yularen ordered into the fleet-wide channel. "Designate primary targets and coordinate volleys. We need to overwhelm their shields with sustained barrage." Across the Republic formation, 17 warships maneuvered with a grace and speed that the Imperial vessels couldn't match. The Venator-class destroyers were designed for rapid deployment and fighter superiority, their engines allowing for quick repositioning that made the lumbering Imperial cruisers look like orbital fortresses in comparison. "Launch all fighter squadrons," Yularen commanded. ARC-170s and V-wings. "Tell them to target the weapon batteries directly. Get inside those shields if possible." Within minutes, hundreds of Republic starfighters streamed from the hangar bays, their sleek forms dancing through the void with precision that spoke to both clone pilot training and integrated droid navigation systems. The ARC-170s formed attack vectors while V-wings established defensive screens, and together they raced toward the Imperial line. They never reached it. From the sides of the Imperial vessels, launch bays opened like the mouths of hungry beasts, and what emerged made Ahsoka gasp in horror through the force link she maintained with Anakin. "Master, those aren't droids, those are people." The Imperial fighters, if they could even be called that, were brutal. Inelegant craft that looked like they'd been hammered together in a forge rather than precision manufactured. Fury interceptors and shark assault boats tumbled into the void, their engines belching flame and their hulls adorned with purity seals and devotional scripture. Behind their controls sat human pilots, their minds enhanced with combat stimulants and their souls screaming prayers to the God Emperor. And they flew with a fanaticism that defied tactical logic. A Fury interceptor, its armor holed by ARC-170 laser fire, didn't break off. Instead, it accelerated directly into the Republic fighter that had damaged it, detonating in a suicidal explosion that took both craft with it. Another Imperial pilot, his engines failing, used his last moments to ram his disintegrating fighter into a V-wing, screaming devotionals that echoed across the Vox channels. "They're insane." Clone Commander Cody's voice crackled over the command channel from the negotiator. "They're deliberately sacrificing themselves." Obi-Wan Kenobi's holographic form appeared beside Yularen, the Jedi Master's face troubled. "This isn't a military we're facing, Admiral. It's a crusade. Every one of those pilots believes they're dying for their god." The fighter engagement evolved into a brutal furball, Republic precision and technology battling Imperial fanaticism and numbers. For every 2 Imperial fighters the clones destroyed, they lost one of their own, and the Imperials had more fighters to spare. But the true horror came when the Imperial boarding craft launched. Cestus assault rams, armored spearheads designed for one purpose, burned across the void toward the Republic formation. Point defense turbo lasers vaporized dozens, but dozens more got through, their armored prows slamming into Republic hulls with devastating force. Melta charges burned through armor plating, and assault ramps dropped. The first boarding occurred on the Acclamator-class assault ship Perseverance. Clone troopers rushed to repel boarders, their DC-15 blaster rifles at the ready, their training and discipline giving them confidence. They'd fought separatist battle droids, Geonosian warriors, and every manner of hostile force the Clone Wars had thrown at them. Nothing prepared them for the Imperium soldiers. The first wave through the breach were armsmen, Imperial Navy security forces clad in flak armor and wielding shotguns that fired mass reactive shells. They charged into the Republic defenders with a howling war cry, and when the clone troopers opened fire, the blaster bolts punched through their armor with lethal efficiency. The armsmen fell by the dozens, but they didn't stop coming. "Contact, Deck 7. Commander Blackout reported from the Perseverance, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Hostiles are poorly armored, but heavily armed. They're using solid projectile weapons, brutal but effective at close range. We're holding the breach, but..." The transmission cut to screaming. Through the helmet cam feed that appeared on Yularen's tactical display, he watched in horror as a new type of Imperial soldier emerged from the boarding craft. These were different. Larger, their armor more substantial, their movements precise and professional. Imperial stormtroopers, elite soldiers enhanced with stimulants and cybernetics, pushed through the breach with coordinated discipline. Behind them came something worse. Inquisitorial stormtroopers, their carapace armor painted in black and crimson, hell guns crackling with lethal energy. The clone troopers fought with everything they had, their training and brotherhood making them a cohesive fighting force. But the Imperials had one advantage the Republic couldn't match. They didn't care about casualties. For every Imperial soldier that fell, 2 more stepped over their corpse, and their weapons, crude but devastating, began taking a toll. All ships with boarders, seal compromise sections, and vent atmosphere. Yularen ordered, his voice hard. "We can't let them establish a foothold." "Sir, we have clone troopers still fighting in those sections," the tactical officer protested. "They'll don their helmets and survive the venting. Do it!" Across 3 Republic vessels, atmosphere screamed out into the void, taking Imperial boarders with it. Clone troopers, their armor rated for vacuum, held their positions and picked off the tumbling attackers. It bought them time, but Yularen knew it was a temporary solution. On the bridge of the Resolute, Anakin had gone very still, his eyes closed in concentration. Ahsoka stood beside him, her own presence in the Force reaching out to touch the broader battle. Through the Force, they could sense the Imperial forces, and what they felt chilled them to their core. They're not just fanatical, Anakin said quietly. They believe. Every single one of them believes their Emperor is a god, that we're heretics who deserve death, that dying in his service guarantees their souls eternal glory. This isn't just military discipline, Admiral. It's religious fervor on a scale I've never encountered. Can you use the Force to, I don't know, calm them? Yularen asked desperately. Anakin shook his head. Even if I could affect that many minds at once, which I can't, their faith is absolute. You can't reason with absolute faith. A new voice crackled across the command channel, cold and precise with the authority of absolute conviction. Heretical vessels. This is Inquisitor Corvin Vash of the Ordo Hereticus. You have demonstrated Xenos technology, refused the Emperor's authority, and attacked his holy servants. Your crimes are manifest. Surrender your commanders for interrogation and execution, or we will board every ship in your formation and purge you to the last soul. Yularen straightened, his voice carrying the weight of decades of service to the Republic. This is Admiral Yularen. We acted in self-defense after you opened fire. The Galactic Republic seeks only peaceful coexistence. Cease hostilities immediately, and we can resolve this diplomatically. There is no diplomacy with heretics. There is only purgation. The channel cut. Obi-Wan's hologram appeared, his expression grave. Admiral, I've analyzed their attack patterns and fleet composition. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to capture us. Those boarding actions, the focus on disabling rather than obliterating. They want prisoners. For what purpose? Nothing good, I suspect. Obi-Wan stroked his beard. I recommend we break contact and retreat. Our ships are faster, more maneuverable. We can outrun them. Retreat where? Yularen demanded. We don't even know where we are. Our hyperspace drives are non-functional, and we have no star charts. Anakin's eyes snapped open. Then we make them break off. Ahsoka with me. Admiral, prepare a boarding craft. If they want to board us, we'll return the favor. Time to show these fanatics what a Jedi can do. Yularen wanted to protest, but he'd served with Jedi long enough to know when they'd made up their minds. May the Force be with you, General. Anakin ignited his lightsaber, the blue blade humming to life. It always is. Come on, Snips. Let's introduce the Imperium to the Jedi Order. The LOTI gunship streaked through the debris field between the two fleets, its repulsor lifts compensating for the lateral fire from both sides. Inside the troop bay, Anakin Skywalker stood with perfect balance despite the craft's violent maneuvering, his presence in the Force calm and centered. Around him, 20 clone troopers from the 501st Legion checked their weapons with practiced efficiency. Ahsoka gripped the overhead rail, her montrals twitching as she extended her senses. Master, I can feel them on that ship. So much anger, so much certainty. They're absolutely convinced they're doing the right thing. The Separatists thought they were right too, Anakin replied, his voice hard. Doesn't make them any less wrong. This is different, Ahsoka insisted. The Separatists had doubts, fears, conflicting motivations. These people, it's like their minds are fortresses, unshakable. I've never felt anything like it. Captain Rex, his distinctive blue-marked armor identifying him as the 501st's commander, moved to stand beside Anakin. Sir, what's the tactical objective? Are we sabotaging their ship, capturing their commander, or sending a message? Anakin's jaw tightened. All three. We're going to board their flagship, disable enough systems to make them think twice about continuing this fight, and capture whoever's in charge. Then we'll make them listen to reason. And if they won't listen, sir, then we make them." The gunship shuddered as it approached the massive Imperial battlecruiser Righteous Fury, its Gothic architecture looming like a mountain range of metal and stone. Lance batteries tracked the small craft, but the LA-8 High's speed and the covering fire from the Resolute kept the Imperial guns from acquiring a clean lock. 30 seconds to breach point," the pilot called back. "Hold on." The gunship's composite beam laser fired, cutting through the Imperial vessel's hull armor with surgical precision. A far cry from the crude breaching charges the Imperials had used. Molten metal sprayed into the void as the LAT-I's magnetic clamps seized the breach, creating an emergency airlock. "Go, go, go!" Rex shouted. The clone troopers poured through the breach, their DC-15s sweeping the corridor beyond. They emerged into a nightmare of Gothic excess. A hallway 10 meters tall, its walls adorned with frescoes depicting armored warriors slaughtering alien creatures, its ceiling vaulted like a cathedral. Servitors, half human, half machine constructs, shambled through their menial tasks, their lobotomized minds barely registering the intruders. Ahsoka recoiled in horror. "Master, those things, they're people. They've been turned into machines." Anakin's face darkened, his mechanical hand clenching. He knew all too well the horror of having one's flesh replaced with machinery. But this was different. These servitors weren't wounded warriors rebuilt. They were people deliberately lobotomized and mechanized, reduced to biological components in the ship's systems. "Focus, Snips," he said quietly. "We'll deal with this later. Rex, secure the corridor." The clones moved with textbook precision, establishing overlapping fields of fire and designating rally points. Their training had prepared them for boarding actions against separatist vessels. But the sheer scale of the Imperial ship was overwhelming. The corridor alone was larger than some Republic corvettes. An alarm klaxon blared, a deep, mournful sound like a funeral bell. "Intruder alert. Deck 47, Section Epsilon. All security teams respond. The Emperor protects." "Here they come," Rex warned, his blaster rifle aimed down the corridor. The first Imperial response team rounded the corner at a dead run. Armsmen in flak armor, their shotguns and autoguns blazing. The clones opened fire with disciplined volleys, their blaster bolts punching through the light armor with ease. The armsmen fell, but more came behind them, climbing over their dead comrades without hesitation. "They don't break," one clone shouted. "They just keep coming." Anakin stepped forward, his lightsaber a blue blur as he deflected incoming fire. The solid slugs that the Imperials fired couldn't be redirected like blaster bolts, but his blade could still vaporize them mid-flight, creating a protective curtain of plasma. He advanced down the corridor with supernatural grace, his connection to the Force allowing him to anticipate every shot before it was fired. An autogun round that should have taken his head was deflected. A shotgun blast meant for his chest was intercepted. Anakin moved through the Imperial fire like a dancer through rain, untouchable and inexorable. The armsmen faltered, their fanaticism finally meeting something beyond their understanding. "Sorcery!" one screamed. "The heretic wields unclean powers." Anakin reached the Imperial line, and his lightsaber sang. Unlike the elegant Form 2 that Dooku preferred, or the defensive Form 3 that Obi-Wan mastered, Anakin fought with Form V, aggressive, powerful, overwhelming. His blade carved through autoguns, armor, and flesh with equal ease. The armsmen tried to bring their weapons to bear, but he was faster, stronger, enhanced by the Force to superhuman levels. Within seconds, the corridor was clear of living enemies. Ahsoka caught up, her twin green blades having dispatched the stragglers with precise strikes. "Master, they called you a sorcerer. What did they mean?" "I don't know, and I don't care." Anakin pointed down the corridor with his lightsaber. "Rex, take point. We need to reach their command deck." The 501st advanced deeper into the Imperial vessel, and with each corridor they passed, the architectural excess became more pronounced. Statues of armored warriors stood in alcoves, their eyes replaced with skull motifs. Devotional banners hung from the ceilings, proclaiming the Emperor's divinity in high Gothic script that the Republic's translators struggled to parse. Auto shrines burned incense in honor of the machine god, tended by servitors whose bodies had been reduced to little more than ambulatory mechanical frames with human heads grafted on top. "This whole ship is like a temple," Ahsoka whispered, disturbed. "They don't just serve their emperor, they worship him." Before Anakin could respond, a new presence made itself known through the Force. It was wrong, sharp, focused, and tinged with something that felt like the Force, but fundamentally corrupted. Anakin's hand went to his lightsaber instinctively. "We have company," he warned. "Something different, powerful." The corridor ahead darkened, as if light itself was being consumed. Emergency lumens flickered and died. Through the shadows strode a figure clad in black power armor, his bulk making even the towering corridor seem cramped. In his hands, he carried a force sword that crackled with psychic energy, and on his chest, he wore the symbol of the Inquisition, a stylized eye crossed with a skull. Inquisitor Corvin Vash had come to face the heretics personally. "I am the hammer that breaks the unclean," Vash intoned, his voice amplified by his armor's Vox system. "I am the fire that purges the witch. I am the Emperor's will made manifest. You stand accused of sorcery, heresy, and transgression against the God Emperor's domain. Your sentence is death." Anakin stepped forward, positioning himself between the Inquisitor and his troops. "I am Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker of the Galactic Republic. We didn't come here looking for a fight, but we'll finish one if we have to. Stand down." Vash's helmeted head tilted, his psychic senses probing the Jedi before him. What he found shocked him. Here was a psyker of immense power, untrained by the Scholastica Psychana, unsanctioned by the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, and wielding powers that should have consumed him with warp-spawned corruption decades ago. Yet the young man before him showed no obvious signs of possession, no mutation, no demonic taint. It made him all the more dangerous. "You wield the power of the warp without sanction," Vash said coldly. "You command energies that damn souls and break reality. You are a witch, and all witches must burn." "I don't know what the warp is," Anakin shot back, "but the Force is nothing like what you're describing. It's the energy that binds all living things together. It's natural. It's lies!" Vash roared, his Force sword igniting with psychic fire. "The warp knows only corruption. You may deceive yourself, witch, but you cannot deceive the Inquisition." He charged. The Inquisitor moved with speed that belied his massive armor, his Force sword sweeping in a deadly arc meant to cleave Anakin in half. The Jedi's lightsaber came up just in time, the two blades meeting in a shower of sparks and psychic discharge. The impact sent shockwaves through the corridor, buckling metal deck plates and shattering lumens. Anakin's eyes widened. This was the first time since facing Count Dooku that someone had matched his blade with equal force. "You're strong," Anakin admitted, circling. "But strength alone doesn't make you right. Righteousness is measured by faith, not dialogue." Vash countered, pressing his attack. The two warriors clashed in the center of the corridor, their blades creating a storm of light and psychic energy. Vash fought with the brutal efficiency of the Inquisition, no wasted movement, no mercy, every strike designed to kill. Anakin countered with Jedi precision, his connection to the Force allowing him to anticipate attacks before they came. But something was wrong. Every time Anakin reached deeply into the Force, he felt that wrongness again. The screaming void that Ahsoka had sensed, the ocean of suffering that seemed to underlie all of reality in this place. It distracted him, made his movements fractionally slower. Vash noticed. His blade found an opening, scoring across Anakin's pauldron and leaving a burning gouge in the armor beneath. Your powers falter, Vash pressed. The warp rejects you. The Emperor's light exposes your corruption. Anakin growled, switching to pure Form V aggression. He drove Vash back with a flurry of strikes, his anger lending strength to his blows. The Inquisitor's defense held, but barely, his psychic shield straining under the assault. Behind them, Rex and the 501st engaged the reinforcements that poured into the corridor. Imperial stormtroopers in carapace armor, their hellguns blazing. The clones fought with practiced efficiency, but the Imperials had numbers and fanaticism on their side. Ahsoka! Anakin shouted. Get the men out of here, back to the gunship. I'm not leaving you. That's an order, Padawan. Ahsoka hesitated, torn between obedience and loyalty. But Rex made the decision for her. Come on, Commander. We need to secure the extraction point. He grabbed her arm and pulled her back, the 501st laying down covering fire as they retreated. Anakin and Vash stood alone in the corridor, their blades locked, their wills clashing as fiercely as their weapons. You don't have to do this, Anakin said through gritted teeth. We can find another way. We can talk. There is no talking with a heresy, Vash replied coldly. Only purgation. He channeled psychic energy through his force sword, the blade erupting in white-hot flames. Anakin's lightsaber held, but the heat was intense, forcing him to break the lock and leap back. From deeper in the ship, Anakin could hear the heavy footfalls of something massive approaching. Through the Force, he sensed new presences. Larger, more dangerous, armored in ceramite and fanaticism. Space Marines were coming. Anakin made his decision. He raised his mechanical hand and unleashed a telekinetic push that sent Vash flying backward into a bulkhead with bone-crushing force. The Inquisitor's armor saved his life, but he was stunned, his psychic shields momentarily disrupted. This isn't over, Anakin promised. Then he ran. He caught up with his troops at the breach point just as the first Space Marines rounded the distant corner. Towering figures in blue power armor, their bolters roaring. Rex and the clones poured covering fire as Anakin and Ahsoka leaped aboard the gunship. Go, 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 Rex shouted. The Lat-Eye detached and burned away from the righteous fury, Imperial fire chasing it all the way back to the Resolute. Inside the troop bay, Anakin sat in silence, his mind churning. They'd accomplished nothing. No sabotage, no captured commander, no message sent. All they'd done was confirm what he'd feared. The Imperium couldn't be reasoned with. Master? Ahsoka ventured quietly. What do we do now? Anakin looked at his Padawan, at the clone troopers who'd followed him into hell without question, and then out at the Gothic nightmares that masqueraded as warships. Now, he said grimly, now we figure out how to survive in a galaxy that's forgotten what mercy means. The Republic fleet limped through the void, shields flickering and hulls scarred from hours of brutal engagement. In the war room of the Resolute, an emergency council convened. Holographic projections of ship commanders, Jedi generals and senior clone officers filled the chamber, their faces grim. Admiral Yularen stood at the head of the tactical display, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Casualty report: 417 dead, 823 wounded. We've lost the Perseverance to catastrophic hull breaches. The crew evacuated, but the ship is a total loss. Our fighter wings are down to 63% operational capacity. Ammunition reserves are at 70%. Medical supplies critical. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. In a single engagement, the Republic task force had suffered losses equivalent to a major Clone Wars battle, and they had no reinforcements coming. No Republic shipyards to effect repairs. No supply convoys to replenish their stocks. They were utterly alone. The Imperials have broken off pursuit. Obi-Wan Kenobi reported, his hologram emanating calm despite the circumstances. Their vessels are slower than ours in sublight, and they seem unwilling to overextend their formation. We've gained approximately 3 light hours of distance. 3 light hours, Jedi Master Plo Koon observed, his mask-filtered voice thoughtful. Without functional hyperspace capabilities, that represents minimal strategic advantage. They will find us again. Anakin paced the room like a caged Nexu, his anger barely contained. We need to talk about what I saw on that ship. Those servitors. They take people and turn them into machines, living machines, with their minds wiped clean. It's barbaric. It's worse than barbaric, Ahsoka added quietly. It's systematic. That whole ship was maintained by enslaved people who'd been lobotomized and augmented. And the regular crew didn't even seem to notice, like it was normal. Jedi Master Kit Fisto's hologram flickered, his usually jovial expression replaced by concern. The Force itself feels different here, corrupted. Every time I meditate, I sense something vast and terrible underlying reality, like the universe itself is wounded. I felt it too, Obi-Wan agreed. It's as though the dark side has become ambient, not concentrated in individuals like the Sith, but diffused throughout space itself. Meditation brings nightmares instead of clarity. Around the table, every Jedi nodded. The Force, which had always been their guide and ally, had become treacherous in this new galaxy. Even basic techniques like precognition now produced visions of horror and madness, rather than useful tactical insight. Admiral Yularen cleared his throat, bringing the discussion back to immediate concerns. Philosophical matters aside, we need to make strategic decisions. Option 1. We attempt to evade Imperial forces while searching for a habitable system to establish a base of operations. Option 2. We attempt renewed diplomatic contact, perhaps with a different Imperial faction. Option 3. We search for other civilizations in this galaxy who might be more reasonable. Diplomacy failed, Anakin said harshly. They called us heretics and witches. They worship their emperor as a god. You can't negotiate with religious fanatics. Anakin, Obi-Wan chided gently. I seem to recall successfully negotiating with the Zygarians, who worship their slave empire as divinely ordained. Fanaticism can be reasoned with, if you find the right approach. The Zygarians didn't try to board our ships and execute us on sight. Actually, they did. You just weren't there for that particular negotiation. Clone Commander Cody's hologram raised a hand. Sirs, if I may? The men are asking questions. They want to know if we're going home, if the Republic is sending reinforcements. They're soldiers. They'll follow orders. But uncertainty is corrosive to unit cohesion. The statement created an uncomfortable silence. What could they tell the clones? That hyperspace was impossible here? That the Republic might be in another dimension entirely? That they might never see Coruscant again? It was Jedi Master Shak Ti who broke the silence, her voice measured and calm. We must be honest with the troops. They deserve truth, not comforting lies. We are far from home, possibly beyond return. But we are still the Republic. We still stand for justice, freedom, and the protection of innocence. That doesn't change, regardless of where we find ourselves. Noble sentiment. Senator Bail Organa's hologram interjected, the lone political representative who'd been aboard the Negotiator when the hyperspace accident occurred. But we need to be practical. We have limited supplies, no industrial base, and we're surrounded by hostiles. How long can we maintain our principles before we're forced to compromise? Compromise how? Obi-Wan asked, his tone sharp. Organa spread his hands apologetically. I'm simply raising questions that will inevitably arise. Do we maintain our prohibition on slavery if it means trading with slave-holding civilizations for crucial supplies? Do we refuse to conscript local populations if we need manpower? Do we hold to Republic law when Republic authority no longer exists? We hold to our principles because they define who we are, Anakin said firmly, surprising everyone, given his usual pragmatism. The moment we start acting like the Imperium, we become no better than them. Well said, Obi-Wan agreed. Though I suspect we'll find that resolve tested sooner than we'd like. The tactical display updated as new sensor data processed. The Republic's long-range scanners, far superior to the crude auger arrays the Imperials used, had been conducting continuous sweeps of the surrounding space. Now, Lieutenant Pons highlighted several findings. Sirs, we've identified multiple inhabited systems within 20 light-years. Most show signs of human habitation, cities, orbital stations, spacecraft. But 3 systems show energy signatures that don't match the Imperial profile. They could be other civilizations. Yularen leaned forward. Show me. The display zoomed to show a system designated KX-7841. Planets, stations, and something else. Energy signatures that flickered in and out of normal space, defying conventional physics. That interference pattern, Plo Koon observed. It resembles the portals the Imperial ships used to arrive. Some kind of faster-than-light travel. If we can understand their technology, we might restore our own hyperspace capability, Anakin said, hope creeping into his voice. Or at least find a civilization that doesn't shoot first and ask questions never. Or, Obi-Wan cautioned, we could encounter something even worse than the Imperium. Let's not forget that we still don't understand where we are or what the rules of this galaxy are. A warning klaxon interrupted the debate, the combat alert that every soldier dreaded. Contact! The sensor officer's voice crackled over the intercom. Multiple vessels emerging from spatial anomalies, bearing 284 Mark 7. They're not Imperial signatures. The tactical display updated, showing new contacts materializing impossibly close to the Republic formation. These ships were different, sleek, organic-looking, their hulls adorned with bone-white armor and crimson sigils that seemed to writhe in the starlight. Sensor analysis, Yularen commanded. Sir, they're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Language is, it's similar to the Imperial dialect, but different, more archaic. They're hailing us. Put it through. The voice that filled the war room was cultured, aristocratic, and tinged with dark amusement. Unknown vessels, I am Captain Varkoth of the Red Corsairs Warband. Your ships are impressive, your technology unusual, and your situation desperate. We have observed your engagement with the Imperium's lapdogs. Impressive resistance against such overwhelming fanaticism. Anakin exchanged glances with Obi-Wan. The tone was different, less immediately hostile, but carrying an undercurrent of predatory interest. You interest us, strangers. The Imperium brand you heretics, but we know heresy well. We were once their finest warriors before we saw through their lies. We offer you what they never would: an alliance, knowledge of this galaxy, safe harbor, and freedom from the false Emperor's tyranny. It's a trap, Anakin said immediately. Almost certainly, Obi-Wan agreed, but also an opportunity for intelligence gathering. We know nothing about the political landscape here. These Red Corsairs clearly oppose the Imperium. Senator Organa stroked his beard thoughtfully. The enemy of our enemy, however temporarily. Sirs, Commander Cody interrupted. Those ships are holding position. No weapons lock, no aggressive maneuvering. They're waiting. Through the Force, Anakin reached out toward the Red Corsairs' vessels. What he sensed made his blood run cold. The wrongness he'd felt from the Imperium was present here too, but different. Concentrated, deliberate, and hungry. It reminded him uncomfortably of the dark side, but magnified 1,000-fold. Master, Ahsoka whispered beside him, her face pale. Those ships, there's something inside them, something that feels like it's eating reality. I sense it too, Snips. But we need information, and they're the only ones offering to talk instead of shoot. Admiral Yularen made his decision. Open a channel. Let's see what these Red Corsairs have to say. The holographic display shimmered, and a figure materialized, a giant in power armor that made the Inquisitor's armor look crude by comparison. The armor was ancient, its crimson surface scarred by countless battles and adorned with trophies of war. The warrior's face was bare, revealing features that were human but enhanced, his expression carrying the weight of centuries. Captain Varkoth smiled, and it was not a kind smile. At last, you show wisdom. I am pleased. The Imperium would have offered you nothing but chains and execution. We offer you something far more valuable. Truth. Truth about what? Obi-Wan asked carefully. About this galaxy. About the Imperium's lies. About the nature of the power you wield. What you call the Force, and what we know as the Warp. About why the Imperium fears you and why they should. Anakin stepped forward. You say you were once Imperial warriors. What made you betray them? Varkoth's smile widened. Betray? No, young psyker. We simply opened our eyes. 10,000 years ago, we fought for the Emperor's great crusade, believing his lies about unity and enlightenment. Then we learned the truth, that he was no god, but a tyrant, that his Imperium was built on oppression and ignorance, that there were other powers in this universe, older, stronger, more worthy of allegiance. The way he said other powers made every Jedi in the room tense. Through the Force, they could feel something stirring in the space around the Red Corsairs' ships. Presences that defied categorization, entities that existed in a realm beyond normal reality. We're listening, Yularen said neutrally, but we're not committing to anything. Speak your piece. Very well. I will offer you a gift, knowledge. You arrived in the Segmentum Obscurus, a region of space controlled primarily by the Imperium of Man, a theocratic empire spanning 1,000,000 worlds. They worship the Emperor, a being who sits on a throne of gold in a half-dead state, sustained by the sacrifice of 10,000 psykers daily. They rule through fear, ignorance, and religious fervor. The number hit like a physical blow. 10,000 psykers. Daily. But the Imperium is not alone in this galaxy. Varkoth continued. There are the Xenos races, aliens that the Imperium seeks to exterminate. There are the forces of chaos, beings of pure warp energy that offer power to those brave enough to seize it. And there are free humans like us, who reject both the Imperium's tyranny and chaos's corruption, seeking our own path through strength. And which path do you walk? Obi-Wan asked pointedly. Varkoth's expression turned predatory. We walk the path of freedom. We take what we want. We owe allegiance to no one. We have seen gods and demons, and we fear neither. Join us, and you will learn to thrive in this galaxy instead of merely surviving. Join you as what? Anakin demanded. Slaves? Soldiers? As allies, Varkoth said smoothly. As equals who share our enemies. The Imperium will hunt you relentlessly. They cannot tolerate the existence of powerful psykers outside their control. But together, we could be unstoppable. Your technology, our knowledge of the warp. Your discipline, our freedom. Admiral Yularen looked at the assembled Jedi, reading their expressions. He saw suspicion, wariness, and, most troubling, consideration. The Republic was desperate, and desperate people made dangerous choices. We need time to discuss this, Yularen said finally. Of course, Varkoth agreed easily. But know this, the Imperium is already hunting you. Their Inquisition has marked you as a priority threat. Lord Inquisitor Kairos himself has been dispatched with a battle fleet to purge you. You have days at most before they find you again. The hologram flickered. Consider our offer carefully. We will remain in contact range. Choose quickly, strangers. In this galaxy, hesitation is death. The transmission ended. Silence filled the war room as the enormity of their situation settled over everyone like a shroud. They were hunted by a theocratic empire that spanned 1,000,000 worlds. Their only offer of alliance came from self-professed pirates and renegades who clearly served something dark and terrible. And somewhere in the background, Anakin could feel those other powers Varkoth had mentioned. Ancient, patient, and hungry. Well, Obi-Wan said dryly, breaking the silence. I don't suppose anyone brought a holonet beacon. I'd very much like to call Coruscant right about now. Despite everything, a few people chuckled. Brief, bitter laughter in the face of impossible odds. We need options that don't involve the Imperium or these corsairs, Senator Organa said firmly. Continue scanning for other civilizations. Someone in this galaxy must believe in diplomacy. And if no one does? Anakin asked quietly. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Because the truth, the terrible truth they were all beginning to understand, was that they might have fallen into a universe where their principles, their democracy, their very identity as the Republic was incompatible with survival. And the choice between staying true to who they were and adapting to become something darker was rapidly approaching. The fleet drifted in the empty space between stars, running silent with minimal power signatures while Republic technicians worked frantically to understand their situation. In the engineering bay of the Resolute, Chief Engineer Koho stood before a dismantled hyperdrive motivator, his Celestin features creased with frustration. It's not damaged, he explained to the assembled Jedi and officers. That's what makes this so disturbing. Every component is functioning perfectly according to diagnostics. But when we attempt to engage hyperspace, nothing happens. It's as if hyperspace itself doesn't exist here, or exists differently. Obi-Wan mused, studying the technical readouts. The Imperials use those spatial rifts to travel, portals that tear through some other dimension. Perhaps faster-than-light travel here operates on entirely different principles. Anakin leaned over the console, his mechanical hand tracing the power flow diagrams. What about the calculations? Could our Navy computers be using coordinates that don't translate to this galaxy? We've tried every known calculation method, Coho replied. Standard, emergency, even theoretical models. Nothing. It's like trying to swim through solid durasteel. The medium we're trying to enter simply isn't accessible. The implications settled over the group like a death shroud. Without hyperspace, the Republic fleet was limited to sublight speeds. Systems that would take hours to reach in their home galaxy would take years here. They were effectively trapped within whatever stellar region they currently occupied. Then we learned their method, Anakin said decisively. We've seen the Imperials and those Corsairs both use portal technology. If they can do it, so can we. Reverse engineering alien technology without proper facilities or reference materials? Coho's ears drooped. General Skywalker, that could take months, years even. We don't have years, Ahsoka interjected. Those Corsairs said the Imperium is sending a whole battle fleet after us. A clone trooper entered the bay, saluting sharply. Sirs, Admiral Yularen requests your presence on the bridge. We've received transmissions from multiple sources. The bridge of the Resolute hummed with tense activity. Yularen stood at the command center, his face grave as he gestured to the communication station. We've intercepted 17 separate transmissions in the last 3 hours, he explained. None directed at us, but our equipment is sophisticated enough to eavesdrop on local communications. Lieutenant, play the compiled translations. The first transmission crackled to life. Harsh, mechanical voices, speaking in the Gothic language the Republic's computers were slowly learning to parse. Planetary tithe collection delayed. Governor claims rebel activity in Hive sectors 7 through 12. Recommend immediate Arbites deployment and summary executions to restore compliance. The second was worse. Xenos contamination confirmed in agricultural district. Initiating exterminatus protocols. May the Emperor forgive us for failing to protect this world. Population, 4 billion souls. All will be cleansed in his holy fire. Ahsoka's hand went to her mouth. They're going to kill 4 billion people? Because of alien contamination, Obi-Wan said quietly, his voice heavy. This is what we're dealing with. They don't quarantine, don't evacuate, don't even attempt containment. They simply destroy entire worlds. More transmissions played. Reports of rebellions crushed with mass executions, of psykers being rounded up and shipped to Terra by the thousands, of entire populations pressed into military service or worked to death in factorums. Each transmission painted a picture of the Imperium, a civilization operating at a scale that dwarfed the Republic, but at a human cost that was almost incomprehensible. There's more, Yularen said, switching frequencies. We've also intercepted what appears to be distress calls from humans requesting Republic assistance. This transmission was different, desperate, terrified, and transmitted on frequencies that shouldn't have been accessible to local technology. Anyone listening? Republic vessels. We detected your ships. We are refugees from Imperial persecution, hiding in the Kuiper Belt asteroid field. The Imperium will kill us for knowing forbidden technology. Please, if you stand for justice. If the Republic still exists, help us. The bridge fell silent. Every officer, every clone trooper, Every Jedi felt the weight of that plea. The Republic had always stood for the protection of the innocent. It was their foundational principle, encoded in their very identity. "It's obviously a trap," Commander Cody said flatly. "The Imperium knows we intercepted their communications. They know we'd respond to a distress call. They're using civilians as bait. The transmission originated from the Kyber Belt," the sensor officer reported. "An asteroid field in system LV-427, approximately 8 light hours from our current position. High concentration of metallic asteroids, ideal for hiding ships or establishing covert bases. Also ideal for ambushes." Senator Organa stepped forward, his expression troubled. "We have a duty to investigate. If there are truly refugees in danger, we have a duty to survive," Anakin interrupted harshly. "We can't help anyone if we're dead. And those refugees, if they're even real, are already compromised. The Imperium doesn't leave loose ends." "Since when did you become so callous?" Ahsoka asked, shocked. "Since we ended up in a galaxy where helping people gets you branded a heretic and executed," Anakin shot back. "We need to think strategically, not emotionally." Obi-Wan placed a calming hand on Anakin's shoulder. "Your concern is noted, my friend, but we cannot abandon our principles simply because the circumstances have changed. If we do, what separates us from the Imperium?" "Survival," Anakin said coldly. Before the argument could escalate, a new alert sounded. The tactical display updated, showing fresh contacts emerging from spatial rifts near the fleet's position. But these weren't Imperial signatures or Corsair vessels. These were different. "Contacts identified," the sensor officer reported, his voice uncertain. "Multiple small craft, unarmed, broadcasting civilian transponders. They're refugees. Running from something." On the view screen, a ragged flotilla of ships appeared, converted cargo haulers, modified passenger liners, even what looked like mining vessels. Each was crowded beyond capacity, their hulls scarred and patched, their engines straining. And behind them, emerging from another spatial rift, came Imperial patrol ships, smaller than the battle cruisers, but no less deadly. "They're being hunted," Plo Koon observed. "The Imperium is pursuing civilian vessels." "Receiving transmission from the lead refugee ship," the communications officer reported. A human face appeared on the screen, weathered, desperate, eyes hollow with exhaustion. "Please, we are fleeing Imperial persecution. Techno-heresy charges. They will kill us all. Men, women, children. Please." The Imperial patrol ships were closing, their lance batteries charging. The refugees had minutes at most before they were in weapons range. Admiral Yularen looked at the assembled Jedi, at Senator Organa, at his clone commanders. "This is what we feared. The moment where our principles collide with our survival. If we intervene, we reveal our position. If we don't..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Anakin's hand clenched into a fist, his internal struggle visible on his face. Every strategic instinct told him to stay hidden, to preserve the fleet's strength. But those were civilians, families fleeing certain death. Could he really watch them die to maintain tactical advantage? Obi-Wan moved to the viewport, his hands clasped behind his back in a gesture of contemplation. The Jedi Code teaches us, there is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. But it also teaches us that we are the guardians of peace and justice. How can we claim to stand for justice if we stand by and watch innocents die? "The Imperium is baiting us," Commander Cody insisted. This is textbook entrapment doctrine. They know we're here somewhere, so they're forcing us to reveal ourselves. Perhaps, Obi-Wan agreed. But does that make those refugees any less real? Any less deserving of aid? On the tactical display, the Imperial ships had entered weapons range. Lance batteries fired, and the rearmost refugee vessel, a converted ore hauler, exploded in a ball of fire and debris. Thousands of lives snuffed out in an instant. Ahsoka turned away, tears streaming down her face. We have to do something. Anakin closed his eyes, reaching into the Force for guidance. But instead of clarity, he found only that terrible wrongness, the screaming void that seemed to permeate this entire galaxy. The Force offered no easy answers here, only the weight of impossible choices. Admiral, Anakin said quietly, his decision made. Bring us about, all ships, combat formation. We're going in. Anakin, Obi-Wan began. I know it's a trap, Master. I know we're probably playing into their hands. But I won't sit here and watch civilians die because we're too afraid to act. If that makes me a fool, so be it. Yularen nodded slowly, respect evident in his expression. You heard the General. All ships, full combat alert. Helm, plot, and intercept course. Weapons, prepare to engage Imperial vessels. Comms broadcast to the refugees. Tell them to make for our position at best speed. The Republic fleet surged forward, shields blazing to full power as they accelerated toward the engagement zone. The 3 Venator-class Star Destroyers took point, their turbo-laser batteries tracking the Imperial patrol ships with deadly precision. The Imperials noticed immediately. Their Vox channels erupted with alarm and fury. Heretic vessels detected. The false Republic reveals itself. All ships, engage and destroy. But the Imperial patrol ships were small. Corvettes and frigates designed for system defense, not fleet engagement. Against the Republic's capital ships, they were hopelessly outmatched. Fire, Yularen commanded. Turbo laser fire lanced across the void, concentrated volleys from multiple ships converging on single targets. The first Imperial corvette's shields collapsed under the barrage, and follow-up shots punched through its armored hull, detonating magazines and reactors. It died in seconds. The second Imperial ship attempted evasive maneuvers, its captain demonstrating skill and courage. But Republic targeting computers, linked to the Force-enhanced reflexes of Jedi gunners, didn't miss. The Corvette lasted 30 seconds longer than its compatriot before it too exploded. The remaining Imperial ships, recognizing they were outgunned, did something unexpected. They turned toward the refugee flotilla and fired everything they had. They're targeting the civilians, Ahsoka shouted in horror. Helm, emergency acceleration. Get us between them, Anakin commanded. The Resolute surged forward, positioning itself as a shield. Lance battery fire that would have vaporized the refugee ships instead splashed against the Star Destroyer's shields, draining them but causing no permanent damage. Republic point defense turbo lasers swatted down incoming torpedoes while the main batteries continued their deadly work. Within 2 minutes, every Imperial vessel was destroyed. But the damage was done. 3 refugee ships had been destroyed in the initial salvos, and 2 more were crippled and venting atmosphere. The survivors, perhaps 15,000 souls across a dozen vessels, were transmitting frantic thanks and pleas for rescue. Bring them aboard, Senator Organa ordered, his voice brooking no argument. Medical bays, cargo holds, anywhere we can fit them. These people need our help. As the rescue operations began, Obi-Wan stood beside Anakin at the viewport, watching clone troopers guide refugee ships to docking bays. You did the right thing, Obi-Wan said quietly. Did I? Anakin asked bitterly. We just announced our presence to every Imperial ship in 10 light years. They'll come for us now. In force. Yes. But we saved 15,000 lives. That matters, Anakin. It has to matter. In the long run, will it matter if the Imperium destroys us? If we can't protect anyone because we're all dead? Obi-Wan had no answer for that. In the Resolute's main hangar bay, the first refugees were disembarking, humans of all ages, many injured, all bearing the haunted expressions of those who'd seen too much death. Clone medics moved among them with efficiency and compassion, distributing rations and treating wounds. Ahsoka knelt beside a young girl, perhaps 8 years old, whose arm was wrapped in blood-soaked cloth. "It's okay," Ahsoka said gently. "You're safe now. We won't let them hurt you." The girl looked up with eyes far too old for her face. "You're like the angels in the stories, the ones who protected people before the long night, before the Emperor's light drove them away." "Angels?" Ahsoka asked, confused. An older refugee, a man with augmetic replacements for both legs, limped forward. "Forgive her. She speaks of legends, of the Astartes before the heresy, when the Emperor's sons walked among us as heroes instead of executioners. She sees your abilities and thinks the old tales have returned." "What happened to you?" Ahsoka asked. "Why is the Imperium hunting you?" The man's expression hardened. "We committed the crime of innovation. Our colony discovered a functional STC fragment, standard template construct technology from before the Age of Strife. It contained designs for medical equipment that could have saved millions, but the Mechanicus declared it unsanctioned. The Ecclesiarchy claimed it was heretical, and the Inquisition ordered our entire world purged. 8 billion souls. We are all that escaped." 8 billion. The number was staggering. An entire world destroyed for the crime of finding advanced technology. "That's insane," Ahsoka breathed. "That's the Imperium," the refugee replied. "Welcome to the 41st millennium, angels. I hope your light burns brighter than ours did." On the bridge, alarms began to sound again. The sensor officer's voice carried across the command deck with barely suppressed panic. "Sir," multiple spatial rifts opening across the system, massive energy signatures. It's a fleet. Imperial Navy battle fleet. Lord Inquisitor Kairos commanding. Estimated strength, 20 capital ships, 40 escorts, and..." The officer's voice faltered. "And what?" Yularen demanded. "And 3 Space Marine strike cruisers. The Ultramarines chapter has joined the hunt." Through the Force, every Jedi felt it simultaneously. A massive presence entering the system. Not darkness exactly, but absolute certainty. Unbreakable faith. The will of 10,000 genetically enhanced warriors who had never known defeat, who viewed mercy as weakness and compromise as heresy. They had come to a crossroads. The Imperium's hammer was falling, and the Republic would have to decide: run, hide, or stand and fight against impossible odds. The command staff of the Republic fleet assembled in the war room, with the grim efficiency of soldiers who knew they were out of time. The tactical display dominated the chamber. A 3-dimensional map showing the Imperial battle fleet's positions with cold, mathematical precision. 20 capital ships, 40 escorts, 3 Space Marine strike cruisers, and at the center, the Lord Inquisitor's flagship, the Eternal Judgment, a grand cruiser that dwarfed even the largest Venator-class destroyers. "They're not moving to engage immediately," Commander Cody observed, studying the formation. "They're establishing a blockade pattern around the system's primary mass shadow points. They're boxing us in." "Tactically sound," Admiral Yularen agreed. "They know we're faster in sublight, so they're denying us escape routes. Force us to engage on their terms or slowly starve us out. Anakin paced the room, his frustration palpable. How long until they close the net? Approximately 18 hours at current deployment speed, the tactical officer reported. After that, any attempt to break out will require passing through their gun lines. Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. We have refugees aboard now. 15,000 civilians, many wounded. Running isn't as simple as it was before. Which is exactly what they're counting on, Anakin snapped. This whole thing was designed to slow us down. The refugees, the distress calls, everything. They knew we'd respond, and now they've got us trapped protecting people we can't abandon. Senator Organa's hologram flickered. Are you suggesting we should have left them to die? I'm suggesting we're paying the price for compassion in a galaxy that sees it as weakness. Enough. Plo Koon's calm voice cut through the argument. What's done is done. The question now is how we proceed. Admiral, what are our tactical options? Yularen called up a series of simulations. Option 1, immediate breakout attempt. We'd take heavy casualties fighting through their line, but some ships would likely escape. Option 2, defensive position in the asteroid field. Use the terrain to negate their numerical advantage and force them to come to us. Option 3, negotiate. Attempt to open diplomatic channels and buy time. Negotiation failed before, Commander Cody reminded them. With a local patrol, Obi-Wan countered. This is a Lord Inquisitor. Higher authority, potentially more flexibility. At minimum, we might learn more about their motivations and capabilities. Before anyone could respond, the communications officer burst into the war room. Sirs, we're receiving a transmission. High priority, directed specifically at us. It's from the Inquisitor's flagship. Put it through, Yularen ordered. The holographic display shifted and a figure materialized. Tall, ancient, clad in ornate power armor that bore the scars of centuries. Lord Inquisitor Kiros was old by any standard, his face a roadmap of battles and hard decisions. But his eyes burned with undiminished fervor, and his presence carried the weight of absolute authority. When he spoke, his voice was surprisingly measured, dangerous in its calmness. I am Lord Inquisitor Erasmus Kiros of the Ordo Hereticus, bearer of the Emperor's will and instrument of his judgment. You stand accused of heresy, sorcery, harboring tech heresy, and conspiracy against the Imperium of Man. These are capital crimes punishable by death and worse. He paused, his gaze seeming to pierce through the hologram to examine each person present. However, I am not without mercy. The Emperor's light shines even on those who have strayed. You are clearly not of this galaxy. Your technology, your ignorance of Imperial law, your unusual abilities all suggest an origin beyond the Astronomican's reach. Perhaps you are victims of circumstance rather than deliberate heretics. Anakin's eyes narrowed. This was different from the fanaticism they'd encountered before. Kiros was offering them something, an opening, however narrow. Therefore, I offer you this one opportunity. Surrender your vessels and submit to inquisitorial inspection. Allow us to determine the truth of your nature and origin. If you are found innocent of deliberate heresy, you may be granted Imperial citizenship and absorbed into the Emperor's service. Your technology would be studied by the Mechanicus. Your psykers would be sanctioned and trained. Your soldiers would serve in the Imperial Guard. Refuse, and I will have no choice but to declare you enemies of mankind and prosecute total war until your fleet is dust and your souls are cast into the warp. You have 6 hours to decide." The transmission ended. Silence filled the war room as everyone processed what they'd heard. It was technically an offer of mercy, by Imperial standards at least, but the terms were utterly unacceptable by Republic values. "Imperial citizenship," Senator Organa said slowly, "meaning we abandon the Republic entirely, become part of their empire. Our psykers would be sanctioned and trained," Ahsoka added, her voice hollow. "What does that even mean?" Obi-Wan's expression was grim. "Based on what we've learned from the refugees, Imperial psykers are soul-bound to their Emperor, a process that is agonizing and often deadly. Those who survive become psychic servants, their wills subsumed to the Imperium's needs. They're branded, monitored constantly, and executed at the first sign of corruption. And our technology studied by the Mechanicus," Anakin continued. "Which means they'll strip our ships, reverse engineer everything we have, and turn it into weapons for their crusades. Everything the Republic has built, every advancement we've made, would become tools of oppression." Commander Cody stood at attention, his voice carefully neutral. "Sir, speaking for the men, the clones were created to serve the Republic. If the Republic ceases to exist, what are we?" The question cut to the heart of their dilemma. The clones' entire identity was built around service to the Republic and loyalty to the Jedi. If they surrendered and the Republic was dissolved, would the clones simply transfer that loyalty to the Emperor? Would they lose themselves entirely in service to a god they didn't believe in? "We're not surrendering," Anakin said flatly. "I don't care if it's 6 hours or 6 minutes. We're not giving up everything we are because some religious fanatic demands it." "Anakin, be reasonable," Obi-Wan began. "I am being reasonable. They want us to abandon our principles, enslave ourselves to their Emperor, and become complicit in their atrocities. How is that reasonable?" "It's survival," Senator Organa said quietly. "Distasteful, yes, but alive is better than dead." Anakin rounded on the senator. "Is it? If we have to stop being the Republic to survive, what's the point? We might as well have died fighting." "Easy to say when it's not your decision alone," Organa countered. "We have 18 ships full of people, clone troopers, crew, support staff, and now 15,000 refugees. Are you prepared to condemn all of them because you won't compromise?" The argument was escalating dangerously when Ahsoka suddenly gasped, her hand flying to her head. Around the room, every Jedi reacted similarly. Obi-Wan stumbled. Plo Koon's environmental mask couldn't hide his distress. Even Anakin's eyes widened in shock. Through the Force, they all felt it. A presence approaching the system. Multiple presences, vast, ancient, and utterly wrong. Not the focused fanaticism of the Imperials, but something far darker. Something that felt like the screaming void they'd sensed before, but concentrated into singular, terrible consciousness. "Master," Ahsoka whispered, her voice trembling. "What is that?" Before anyone could answer, alarms shrieked across the fleet. The sensor displays went haywire, showing impossible readings, spatial distortions that made the Imperial portal technology look like gentle ripples in a pond. "Warp rifts opening," the sensor officer shouted. "Multiple contacts. They're inside the system. They just appeared inside our defensive perimeter." The tactical display updated, and what appeared made even the hardened clone commanders take involuntary steps backward. Ships emerged from tiers in reality itself. Vessels that looked like they'd been grown rather than built, their hulls a fusion of metal and something organic. Flesh and bone merged with steel and brass, creating nightmare architectures that defied sanity. Sigils blazed across their hulls, 8-pointed stars that seemed to burn with malevolent intelligence. And from those ships poured a presence that made the Jedi want to scream. It was the dark side, magnified 1,000-fold. An all-consuming hunger that viewed reality itself as prey. "Well, well," a voice boomed across all frequencies. Not transmitted through technology, but seeming to echo directly in the minds of every soul in the system. The servants of the false emperor and the strangers from beyond. How delightful. The gods grow bored with this stalemate. On every Republic ship, emergency bulkheads slammed shut as the presence washed over them. Clone troopers fell to their knees, clutching their heads. Normal crew members began screaming. Even the Jedi, trained in resisting mental attacks, felt their barriers buckling under the psychic assault. "What is that?" Yularen demanded, fighting to stay upright. Through gritted teeth, Obi-Wan answered, "Something that makes the Sith look like children playing with matches. This is what the Force has been warning us about. This is what underlies everything in this galaxy. This is chaos," the voice finished for him, amused. "I am Daemon Prince Zerxath, herald of the dark gods, and you, little Jedi, are about to learn that your Force is but a whisper of the warp's true power." The Imperial fleet, which had been maintaining its blockade formation, immediately broke into battle groups and accelerated toward the Chaos vessels. Whatever enmity existed between the Imperium and the Republic, it paled before their shared hatred of these newcomers. "In the name of the God Emperor, we cast you back into the warp." Lord Inquisitor Kiros's voice crackled across the Vox, backed by the battle cant of 1,000 Imperial sailors. "Destroy the heretics. Let none survive." The Space Marine strike cruisers launched boarding torpedoes at the Chaos vessels, their Ultramarines' crews chanting litanies of hate. Macro cannons roared, lance batteries blazed. The Imperial fleet threw itself at the Chaos incursion with suicidal fervor. Every ship willing to die if it meant denying the dark gods even one victory. And the Republic fleet hung in the center of it all, caught between two forces that made their previous enemies look insignificant. "Admiral," Commander Cody said quietly. "Orders?" Yularen looked at the tactical display, at the Imperial fleet engaging the Chaos forces in brutal, close-quarters combat, at the refugees huddled in their cargo holds, at the Jedi who looked like they were fighting just to remain conscious under the psychic assault, at the clone troopers who waited for orders with unwavering discipline despite the horror surrounding them. He looked at Anakin Skywalker, the young Jedi who'd been so certain just minutes ago, who now stared at the Chaos ships with an expression of dawning horror. "General?" Yularen prompted. "What do we do?" Anakin's hand moved to his lightsaber, his knuckles white with strain. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. "Master Yoda once told me that the dark side is a path to many abilities some consider unnatural. I thought I understood what he meant. I thought facing Dooku and Ventress had shown me the worst the dark side could offer." He pointed at the Chaos vessels, at the entities that even now were boarding Imperial ships and turning them into slaughterhouses. "I was wrong. This isn't the dark side. This is something else entirely. Something that makes the dark side look like a shadow puppet on a wall. And Master..." He turned to look at Obi-Wan, with eyes that had seen too much. "What if the Imperium, as terrible as they are the only thing keeping this from consuming everything?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence, because the terrible, unthinkable possibility was taking shape in all their minds. What if the Imperium's brutality, their fanaticism, their ruthless suppression of everything the Republic stood for, was necessary. What if this galaxy was so hostile, so fundamentally broken, that democracy and compassion were luxuries that got you killed? What if, in order to survive here, the Republic would have to stop being the Republic? On the view screen, a Chaos vessel impaled an Imperial cruiser with tentacles of warped metal and flesh, dragging the screaming crew into its corrupted hull. The Space Marines fought back with flamers and bolters, their battle cries mixing with the demonic laughter that echoed across the Vox. And the Republic had to choose. Join the Imperium in fighting this darkness. Run while both sides were distracted, or try to stand alone against forces that defied comprehension. 6 hours to decide, the Inquisitor had said. They wouldn't have 6 minutes. The bridge of the Resolute had become a scene of controlled chaos. Clone officers shouted reports over the cacophony of alarms. Sensor arrays struggled to process the impossible readings from the Chaos vessels. And through it all, the psychic pressure continued to build like a vice tightening around every conscious mind. Anakin stood at the viewport. His connection to the Force stretched thin as he tried to maintain mental shields for himself and those around him. Beside him, Ahsoka had fallen to one knee, her montrals flat against her head as she fought the whispers that clawed at her thoughts. "Snips, focus on me," Anakin commanded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Block everything else out. You and me, Master and Padawan. Nothing else exists." Through their training bond, he fed her strength, creating a bubble of relative calm in the psychic storm. Gradually, Ahsoka's breathing steadied, though her face remained pale. "Master, I can hear them. In my head. They're promising things. Power, freedom from pain. They know things about me, things I've never told anyone." "They're reading your fears and desires," Obi-Wan said, moving to join them. His own mental shields were holding, but the strain showed in the tightness around his eyes. "Don't listen. Whatever they promise is a lie wrapped in truth." On the tactical display, the battle between the Imperial and Chaos fleets had devolved into brutal savagery. An Imperial destroyer had been boarded by Chaos Space Marines, corrupted versions of the Ultramarines, their armor twisted by mutation and covered in profane symbols. The Vox transmissions from that ship were disturbing. "The flesh is weak. Blood for the blood god." The war cry was punctuated by chainsaw screams and the wet sounds of slaughter. "Brothers, hold the reactor deck." An Ultramarine sergeant's voice, desperate but disciplined. "The Emperor protects, for Ultramar and..." The transmission cut to static, then demonic laughter. "Sir, the Chaos forces are overwhelming the Imperial right flank," Commander Cody reported, his voice steady despite the horror they were witnessing. 3 Imperial cruisers destroyed, 2 more crippled. But the Space Marines are boarding the Chaos flagship. It's insane. They're walking through void without suits, protected by some kind of psychic barrier. Admiral Yularen pulled up the visual feed and immediately wished he hadn't. Ultramarines in their iconic blue power armor marched across the hull of a Chaos cruiser, their boarding shields raised against streams of warp fire that should have vaporized them instantly. Behind them, librarians, Space Marine psykers, channeled the Emperor's power, creating corridors of reality through the madness. They were magnificent, terrifying, and losing. For every Space Marine that reached the Chaos vessel, 2 more fell to demonic assault. Yet they never faltered, never retreated. They sang hymns of hate as they died, their last moments dedicated to the God Emperor. They're buying time, Obi-Wan realized. The Inquisitor is repositioning his main fleet while the Space Marines hold the enemy's attention. He's He's sacrificing them. Acceptable casualties in service to the Emperor, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see one of the rescued refugees, the man with augmetic legs, standing in the doorway to the bridge. He shouldn't have been there. Security protocols were strict. But in the chaos, he'd slipped through. "You don't understand the Astartes," the refugee continued, limping forward. "They don't see themselves as individuals. They're the Emperor's weapons. Every one of them would gladly die if it meant destroying even one servant of chaos. It's what they were made for." "Made for?" Ahsoka asked. "Genetically engineered super soldiers, created 10,000 years ago during the Great Crusade. They're not fully human anymore, enhanced far beyond normal limits, indoctrinated from childhood, and psycho-conditioned for absolute loyalty. They know nothing but war." The refugee pointed at the tactical display, where an ultramarine captain was fighting a chaos champion in single combat on the hull of the burning ship. "That captain will die in the next 30 seconds. He knows it. His brothers know it. And not one of them would choose differently. Because chaos must be stopped, whatever the cost." As if on cue, the ultramarine captain fell, his body torn apart by the chaos champion's demon weapon. But in his last moment, he detonated his armor's power core, taking the champion and a dozen corrupted space marines with him. "Courage and honor." The captain's final words echoed across the Vox before his signal winked out. Silence fell on the bridge. Even the hardened clone commanders, who'd faced death countless times, seemed shaken by the display of fanatical devotion. "They died for nothing," Anakin said bitterly. "The Chaos forces are still advancing. That sacrifice bought maybe 3 minutes." 3 minutes can change everything," the refugee replied. "Watch." On the tactical display, Lord Inquisitor Kairos's flagship had completed its repositioning. The Eternal Judgment now had a clear firing solution on the Chaos Fleet's center. And from its dorsal spine, something activated. A weapons system that made the Republic's turbo lasers look like children's toys. Cyclonic torpedoes armed. The Inquisitor's voice boomed across all frequencies. "May the Emperor forgive this necessity. Fire." 6 massive torpedoes launched, each one carrying a payload designed for one purpose: planetary annihilation. They weren't meant to be used in ship-to-ship combat. The collateral damage would be catastrophic. Kairos fired them anyway. The torpedoes struck the Chaos flagship, and what followed defied physics. Vortex warheads detonated, tearing holes in reality itself. Everything within a 5-kilometer radius of each impact simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, but erased, sucked into the warp and consumed by the roiling energies of the Imperium. The Chaos flagship died, taking 3 Imperial vessels with it in the reality-shattering explosion. Demon Prince Zerxath's psychic scream of rage echoed through the minds of everyone in the system as his physical form was banished back to the warp. "Kill them all," Kairos commanded. "Ram them if you must. The Emperor demands their destruction." The Imperial fleet obeyed. Ships already crippled turned toward Chaos vessels and engaged emergency burns, becoming kamikaze weapons. Crews sang devotional hymns as they died, crashing their vessels into the enemy with the force of orbital impacts. It was brutal, wasteful, horrifying in its absolute disregard for life. And it was working. The Chaos forces, depleted by the cyclonic torpedoes and the suicidal ramming attacks, began falling back. Their ships tore open new warp rifts and then retreated through them, their demonic laughter replaced by frustrated howls. Within 20 minutes of the Inquisitor's desperate gambit, the Chaos incursion was over. They'd been driven back into the warp. at the cost of 12 Imperial capital ships, 30 escorts, and an estimated 500,000 Imperial lives. The Imperial fleet, what remained of it, hung in space, burning and broken but victorious. On the Eternal Judgment, Lord Inquisitor Kiros surveyed the carnage with cold satisfaction before turning his attention back to the Republic fleet. Strangers from beyond. His voice crackled across the Vox, exhausted but unwavering. You have witnessed the eternal war. You have seen what we face. You have seen why the Imperium cannot tolerate weakness, cannot afford mercy, cannot permit deviation from the Emperor's path. The hologram of Kiros reappeared in the Republic war room. His ornate armor was scorched, his face streaked with blood, but his eyes burned with undiminished fervor. Every day, horrors like what you just witnessed attempt to consume humanity. Demons, Xenos, traitors. The galaxy is hostile beyond your comprehension. And the Imperium, for all its brutality, is the only thing standing between humanity and total annihilation. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Now you understand why we are what we are, why we cannot accept your democracy, your compassion, your soft idealism. In this galaxy, such luxuries get you killed, or worse, corrupted, turned into weapons against your own kind. Senator Organa stepped forward. You just killed 500,000 of your own people. You destroyed your own ships. How can you call that protecting humanity? Those people died for humanity's survival. Kairos replied without hesitation. Their sacrifice bought time for billions more to live. That is the calculus of the 41st millennium, Senator. We trade millions of lives today to save billions tomorrow. It is terrible. It is necessary. It is reality. There has to be another way, Ahsoka insisted, her voice desperate. There has to be. Kiros' expression softened. Barely, but enough to show he wasn't entirely without sympathy. Perhaps in your galaxy, child, there was another way. But here, compassion is weakness, hesitation is death, and idealism is the first step toward corruption. I have seen civilizations try to hold to higher principles in the face of chaos. Do you know what happened to them? He gestured to the dissipating warp rifts where the chaos forces had retreated. They became that. Consumed, corrupted, turned into weapons against everything they once loved. The Imperium is cruel because cruelty is armor against far worse fates. Obi-Wan stroked his beard, his expression troubled. You're saying we have no choice. Become like you, or die. Or become like them, Kiros corrected, pointing at the chaos signatures. Those are the options, Jedi. The Imperium's tyranny, extinction, or damnation. Choose. Before anyone could respond, new alarms sounded. But this time, the sensor readings weren't chaos or Imperial. Unknown vessels emerging from spatial distortion, the sensor officer reported. Not Imperial signatures, not chaos. Technology profile is advanced, very advanced. They're hailing us. On screen, Yularen ordered. The hologram shifted, and a figure appeared that made several Jedi gasp in recognition, not because they'd seen this being before, but because through the Force, they sensed something familiar, something clean and precise, untainted by the warp's corruption. The figure was tall, slender, with features that were almost elven in their alien grace. They wore armor that seemed to be made of living wraithbone, and their eyes held the weight of millennia. When they spoke, their voice was like crystal bells, beautiful, but cold. I am Farseer Eldoran of Craftworld Ulthway. We have been observing your arrival with great interest. You are anomalous, souls that shine clearly in the warp yet remain uncorrupted, beings from beyond the reach of she who thirsts. The Eldar, the refugee breathed. Ancient Xenos. The Imperium considers them enemies, but they're not like chaos. They're different. You stand at a crossroads, humans from beyond, Farseer Eldoran continued. The Mon-K. The way he said it made clear it was the Eldar word for humans, and not a compliment. Offer you chains wrapped in necessity. The forces of chaos offer you power wrapped in damnation. We offer you a third path, knowledge, understanding, and perhaps, if you prove worthy, alliance. Lord Inquisitor Kairos' hologram flared with rage. Xenos filth! How dare you interfere in Imperial business? Your business threatens the balance of this sector, Kairos. The Farseer replied coolly. These newcomers represent a variable not seen in 10,000 years. They could tip the scales toward order or chaos. We will not allow you to destroy them out of ignorance. The Eldar fleet, 5 elegant cruisers that moved with impossible grace, positioned themselves between the Republic and Imperial formations. Not aggressive, but clearly protective. You need not decide immediately, Eldoran said to the Republic fleet. But know this, if you ally with the Imperium, you will become what they are, brutal, ignorant, and trapped in an eternal cycle of violence. If you fall to chaos, you will lose yourselves entirely. But if you listen to us, you may yet find a way to preserve your identity while surviving in this hostile universe. The Farseer's image flickered, but before it cut out entirely, he added one more thing. Also, Jedi, yes, we know what you call yourselves. Your force is not what you think it is. The warp has many faces, and you have only seen its nightmare. Come to Ulthway, and we will show you truths that the Mon-K suppress out of fear and ignorance. The transmission ended. Admiral Yularen looked around the war room at the assembled leaders of the Republic fleet, at the Jedi who now questioned everything they knew about the Force, at the clone commanders who waited for orders that would determine the fate of 18,000 souls, at Senator Organa, who represented the last vestige of Republic democracy. Well, Yularen said dryly, at least we have options now. Anakin laughed, a short, bitter sound. Options. Right. Join a theocratic empire that sacrifices millions without hesitation. Trust chaos gods that want to corrupt our souls. Or ally with mysterious aliens who claim the Force is something completely different than we've always believed. When you put it that way, Obi-Wan mused, it almost sounds like we're spoiled for choice. This isn't funny, Master. No, it's not. But if we don't maintain our sense of humor, Anakin, we'll go mad. And in this galaxy, madness seems to be the first step toward damnation. Ahsoka looked out at the 3 forces arrayed around them. Imperial, the lingering taint of chaos, and now Eldar. What do we do, Masters? How do we choose? Plo Koon's mask turned toward her, his voice gentle despite the weight of his words. We do what the Jedi have always done, young one. We seek balance. We gather information. We make the choice that best serves the light, even when surrounded by darkness. And if there is no light left to serve? She asked quietly. The question hung in the air, unanswered, because the terrible truth was becoming clear. In the 41st millennium, the light had been dying for 10,000 years, and the Republic, with its ideals of democracy and justice, was a candle flame in an ocean of darkness. The only question was how long that flame could burn before it was extinguished, or worse, corrupted into something unrecognizable. The Republic fleet hung in the void, between three impossible choices. Their ships scarred and their people exhausted. In the medical bay of the Resolute, clone medics worked alongside Republic doctors to treat the wounded, while Jedi healers moved among the refugees, offering what comfort they could to those who'd witnessed horrors beyond imagining. Ahsoka knelt beside a child, a boy no older than 10, whose eyes stared at nothing. He'd stopped speaking hours ago, his mind retreating from memories of what he'd seen on his homeworld before the evacuation. She placed her hand gently on his forehead, reaching through the Force to offer peace. But the Force here was treacherous. Instead of the calm, healing energy she'd learned to channel, she felt that wrongness again, the screaming void that underlied everything. She pulled back quickly, gasping. "Don't," a voice said behind her. "You'll only make it worse." Ahsoka turned to find an elderly woman, one of the refugees, watching her with knowing eyes. The woman's augmetic eye whirred as it focused, and her robes bore the faded symbol of what looked like a medici order. "I'm trying to help him," Ahsoka protested. "I know, child. But your gifts work differently here. The warp, what you call the Force, is not a benevolent energy. It's a reflection of consciousness, emotion, thought. And in a galaxy that has known nothing but war and suffering for 10,000 years, the warp is an ocean of screaming souls." The woman sat down beside the catatonic boy, producing a simple toy from her robes, a carved wooden bird. She placed it in his hands, not using any psychic power, just human compassion. Sometimes the old ways work best. No powers, no miracles, just presence. Ahsoka watched as the boy's fingers slowly closed around the carving, his eyes flickering with the first sign of awareness she'd seen. "Who are you?" "I was Sister Helena of the Order Hospitaller, before the Inquisition declared our methods heretical for being insufficiently violent in purging disease. Now, I'm just an old woman who knows that compassion doesn't require supernatural intervention. The Inquisition punished you for healing people?" Helena's laugh was bitter. "The Inquisition punishes anyone who questions their methods. Our order believed in treating the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. We used medicine, counseling, and yes, prayer. But we didn't burn the disease to purify them. And we didn't execute the traumatized for weakness of faith. So we were branded heretics." She looked up at Ahsoka with her one good eye. "You're struggling, aren't you? Trying to reconcile what you believe with what you've seen here? Wondering if the Imperium might be right, if cruelty is necessary." Ahsoka wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. "How can I not question? We saw them sacrifice 500,000 people to stop those things. And it worked. What if they're right? What if in this galaxy compassion gets people killed?" "Perhaps," Helena said quietly. "Or perhaps the Imperium's brutality is what created the darkness they fight against. Have you considered that? They kill billions in the Emperor's name. They enslave their own people. They suppress knowledge, crush hope, and teach their children that life is only suffering in service to a corpse god. Is it any wonder that chaos finds fertile ground here?" Before Ahsoka could respond, her comlink chirped. Anakin's voice crackled through. "Ahsoka, report to the conference room. We're meeting with the Eldar." The conference room had been hastily prepared for first contact with an alien species, something the Republic had extensive experience with, but never under circumstances quite like these. Farsair Eldoran's hologram stood at one end of the table, flanked by projections of 2 other Eldar, a warlock whose armor was inscribed with runes that hurt to look at directly, and what appeared to be a warrior in aspect armor, that somehow suggested both grace and lethality. On the Republic side, Obi-Wan led the delegation with Senator Organa, Admiral Yularen, and several Jedi Masters. Anakin stood slightly apart, his arms crossed, his expression suspicious. "Let me be direct," Obi-Wan began, his diplomatic training asserting itself. "You claim to offer us a third path, yet you watch as the Imperium fights what you call chaos. You observe rather than intervene. Why should we trust you any more than them?" Eldoran's expression remained serene. "A fair question. The Eldar do not intervene casually in Mon-Ki affairs because your species has a distressing tendency to shoot first and seek understanding never. We learned long ago that attempting to save humanity from itself is a futile endeavor." "Then why help us?" Anakin demanded. "Because you are different." The Farseer gestured with one elegant hand. "Your souls shine in the warp, with a clarity we have not seen in millennia. You are uncorrupted by chaos, yet you wield psychic power with confidence. You come from beyond the reach of she who thirsts." He used the term with visible distaste. "And you carry no warp taint. You are clean, a rarity beyond measure." "This she who thirsts you mention," Plo Koon interjected. "What is it?" The three Eldar exchanged glances, and for the first time, Eldoran's composure cracked slightly. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of ancient grief. 10,000 of your years ago, the Eldar were masters of the galaxy. We had achieved heights of art, science, and psychic mastery that your species cannot imagine. But we grew decadent, complacent. We indulged every desire, explored every sensation, pursued every pleasure and pain with obsessive intensity. The Warlock continued the story. Our psychic resonance in the warp grew twisted, darker, and from the collective depravity of our civilization, something was born in the Immaterium. A chaos god. Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, she who thirsts. In the moment of her birth, she consumed 60 billion Eldar souls and created a wound in reality called the Eye of Terror. The numbers were staggering. Ahsoka felt sick. Our civilization fell in a single day, Eldoran said softly. 90% of our species died screaming as their souls were devoured. Those of us who survived did so only by fleeing far from our homeworlds or sealing our souls in spirit stones to protect them from her hunger. We are a dying race, kept alive only by desperation and foresight. Senator Organa leaned forward. You're saying your civilization created a god through collective depravity, and it destroyed you? And this is what the warp is capable of. The warp is not inherently evil, the Farseer explained. It is a reflection. When the galaxy knew peace, the warp was calm. But millennia of war, suffering, hatred, and excess have transformed it into a nightmare realm. The four chaos gods, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, are manifestations of humanity's and the galaxy's darkest impulses, grown into sentient malevolence. And the Imperium fights these gods, Obi-Wan said slowly, understanding dawning. That's why they're so brutal. They believe any weakness, any deviation, feeds chaos. They are not entirely wrong, Eldoran admitted. Unchecked emotion, uncontrolled psychic power, moral corruption. All of these feed the dark gods. The Imperium's response is to suppress everything. To create a civilization of rigid control, absolute faith, and total obedience. It has kept humanity alive for 10,000 years. At what cost? Anakin demanded. They've turned humans into machines. They burn entire worlds. They worship a corpse. The Emperor is not dead, the warlock interjected. Nor is he entirely alive. He sits on the golden throne, sustaining the Astronomicon, a psychic lighthouse that allows human ships to navigate the warp. Without him, humanity's Imperium would collapse within months. That is why they worship him, because he is, quite literally, the only thing holding their civilization together. The implications crashed over the Republic delegation like a wave. The Imperium wasn't just religiously fanatic. They worshipped the Emperor because he genuinely was preventing their extinction. Their brutality wasn't simple tyranny. It was survival strategy honed over 10 millennia of apocalyptic warfare. You're telling us, Yularen said carefully, that the Imperium's methods, however distasteful, are actually effective? Effective at survival, yes. Eldoran agreed. Effective at creating a civilization worth preserving? That is another question entirely. The Imperium has sacrificed its humanity to preserve human existence. They are alive, but barely living. They endure, but do not thrive. They survive, but have forgotten why survival matters. And you offer us what exactly? Senator Organa asked. How is allying with you different? We offer you knowledge, Eldoran said. Understanding of the warp, so you can use your psychic gifts without falling to chaos. Technology that might restore your faster-than-light capabilities. Sanctuary on a maiden world where you can establish a base of operations outside Imperial space. And most importantly, we offer you the chance to remain yourselves. In exchange for what? Anakin's tone was sharp with suspicion. In exchange for being what you are, a force of order and justice in a galaxy drowning in darkness. The Eldar cannot save this galaxy. We are too few, too weak, too focused on our own survival. But you? Fresh from a universe where democracy and cooperation are possible? You might be able to make a difference. Not by conquering like the Imperium, but by showing there is another way. Obi-Wan stroked his beard. You want us to be an example, a demonstration that compassion and justice can work even here. More than that, the Farseer said. I want you to survive long enough to see if your principles can take root. If they can, perhaps this galaxy has hope. If they cannot. He trailed off, but the implication was clear. Before anyone could respond, Commander Cody entered the room, his expression grim. Sirs, we have a situation. The refugees are demanding access to the Republic leadership. Specifically, they're demanding we rescue more of their people. More refugees? Yularen asked. No, sir. Prisoners. According to the testimonies we've been collecting, when the Inquisition purged their world, they took hundreds of thousands prisoner for interrogation and other purposes. The refugees know where the prison ships are. They're begging us to mount a rescue. The room fell silent as the weight of the request settled over them. It's a trap, Anakin said immediately. Has to be. They tell us about prison ships. We go to investigate. The Imperium ambushes us. Maybe, Cody agreed. Or maybe those people are genuinely suffering and hoping someone will help them. Even if it's not a trap, Admiral Yularen said. Mounting a rescue operation against Imperial prison ships would be an act of war. We'd be crossing a line we can't uncross. Right now, we're an unknown variable. The moment we actively oppose the Imperium, we become their enemy permanently. Senator Organa's face was troubled. But if we don't help, we're abandoning innocents to torture and execution. Everything the Republic stands for says we should act. Everything the Republic stands for got us stranded in a nightmare galaxy. Anakin shot back. Maybe it's time to accept that our old principles don't apply here. Anakin, Obi-Wan began. No, Master. I'm tired of pretending. We've been here less than a standard week, and we've already lost a ship, hundreds of lives, and we're running out of supplies. Our hyperspace doesn't work. The Force is corrupted. We're surrounded by enemies. And now people want us to throw ourselves into a suicide mission because it's the right thing to do. If we abandon our principles, Ahsoka said quietly, what are we fighting for? Anakin whirled on his Padawan. Survival, Ahsoka. That's what we're fighting for. The right to still exist tomorrow. Existing isn't the same as living, she countered. Sister Helena taught me that. The Imperium exists. They've survived for 10,000 years. But they've forgotten what it means to actually live. Is that what you want us to become? The question hung in the air between them. Farseer Eldoran watched the exchange with interest, his ancient eyes missing nothing. The crossroads approaches faster than you realize, Jedi. Every choice you make now shapes what you will become. Choose survival at any cost, and you will become like the Imperium, brutal, efficient, and empty. Choose your principles without wisdom, and chaos will destroy you. The path between is narrow and treacherous. Then what do we do? Anakin demanded, his frustration boiling over. You do what your order has always done, Obi-Wan said calmly. You face an impossible choice, and you make the best decision you can with the information you have. Then you live with the consequences. He turned to Admiral Yularen. How many people are we talking about? On these prison ships? Cody pulled up the data. According to refugee testimony, approximately 300,000 prisoners spread across 5 transport vessels. They're being taken to an inquisitorial fortress for interrogation and processing. Current location: the Gehenna system, 4 light hours from our position. 4 light hours, Yularen mused. That's within range. But those transports will be heavily guarded, and any attack will alert every Imperial force in the sector. Unless, Eldoran interjected, you allow us to assist. Eldar ships can mask your approach using holofields and webway portals. We could get you close enough for a rapid strike and fade operation. Why would you help us with this? Obi-Wan asked suspiciously. Because rescuing 300,000 innocents from Imperial tortures serves our interests. It weakens the Inquisition's hold on this sector. It provides you with grateful allies, and it forces you to commit to being something other than passive observers. Consider it a field test. Show us whether your principles can survive contact with reality. Senator Organa looked around the table. We should put this to a vote. This is too important a decision for military command alone. With respect, Senator, Yularen said, we're not in Republic space anymore. The normal rules of democratic governance may not apply. Then what rules do apply? Organa demanded. Martial law? Jedi authority? Or do we abandon the Republic's structure entirely? The question cut to the heart of their dilemma. Without the Senate, without Coruscant, without the framework of Republic governance, what were they? A military fleet following Jedi commanders? A mobile dictatorship? Or something else entirely? Anakin looked at each face around the table. The Jedi who'd trained him, the clone commanders who'd fought beside him, the senator who represented civilian authority, and the alien who offered knowledge wrapped in cryptic warnings. Finally, he spoke. We vote, everyone in this room. Jedi officers, senator, clones, everyone gets a voice. Because if we're going to stop being the Republic, we should at least have the courage to admit it. But if we're going to stay true to what we were, we need to prove it matters. Agreed, Obi-Wan said. All in favor of attempting the rescue operation, knowing it commits us to active opposition against the Imperium? Hands rose. Ahsoka first, without hesitation, then Plo Koon, Kit Fisto, and the other Jedi Masters, Senator Organa, Commander Cody and the clone officers. Admiral Yularen looked at his raised hand in mild surprise, as if it had moved without his permission. "Well," he said dryly, "it seems we're committed to being fools together. At least we'll have good company in the afterlife." Only Anakin's hand remained down. "Master?" Ahsoka asked quietly. Anakin closed his eyes, reaching into the Force one more time. Through the screaming void and the ocean of suffering, he searched for guidance. And in the darkness, he found something unexpected, a memory of his mother's voice. "Be brave, Ani, and don't look back." His hand rose. "Unanimous," Obi-Wan confirmed. "Then we're decided. We mount a rescue operation. We save who we can. And we accept that doing so makes us enemies of the Imperium. We were always going to be their enemies," Anakin said quietly. "At least this way. We get to choose why." Farseer Eldoran inclined his head in what might have been respect. "Perhaps there is hope for you after all, humans from beyond." "Very well. My ships will assist your operation. But know this. Once you commit to this path, there is no turning back. You will be hunted. You will be tested. And you will learn whether your ideals are strong enough to survive in the darkness." "We'll survive," Ahsoka said, with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "We have to. Because if we can't make our principles work here, maybe they never worked anywhere." The War Council adjourned, and the Republic fleet began preparations for their first deliberate act of defiance against the Imperium of Man. They were no longer lost travelers seeking a way home. They were rebels in a tyrannical galaxy. And the 41st millennium was about to learn what happened when hope, however small, refused to die. The Gehenna system burned with the light of a dying red giant. The star's bloated crimson mass dominated the view screen of the Resolute, casting everything in a bloody hue that seemed fitting for what they were about to attempt. In the system's asteroid belt, 5 massive Imperial prison transports lumbered toward the third planet, a fortress world bristling with defense platforms and orbital batteries. "Final approach vector confirmed," Commander Cody reported from the tactical station. "Eldar holofields are holding. Imperial augurs show no sign they've detected us." Beside the Republic fleet, the Eldar vessels moved like ghosts through the void. Their holofield technology bent light around them, creating illusions and false sensor readings that confused the primitive Imperial detection systems. To any observer, the space around the prison convoy appeared empty. Anakin stood at the viewport, his lightsaber hanging at his belt, his mind focused on the task ahead. "How long until we're in range?" 12 minutes, Admiral Yularen replied. "But, General, I want to stress again. Once we engage, we'll have approximately 7 minutes before Imperial reinforcements arrive via warp translation. If we're still here when those reinforcements arrive, we won't survive. Then we'll be gone in 6, Anakin said with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. The plan was ambitious to the point of recklessness. 3 Republic Star Destroyers would decloak simultaneously, disable the prison transport's engines with precision turbo laser strikes, and deploy boarding teams via Layat gunships. The clone troopers would fight through to the holding cells, evacuate as many prisoners as possible, and retreat before Imperial reinforcements could respond. The Eldar would provide covering fire and create webway portals for emergency extraction if things went sideways. Simple, direct, likely to get them all killed. "Master," Ahsoka said quietly, moving to stand beside Anakin. "I've been thinking about what Sister Helena said, about how the Imperium's brutality might be what creates the darkness they fight. What if we're wrong? What if rescuing these prisoners just gives chaos more souls to corrupt?" "That's what the Imperium would say," Anakin replied. "That compassion is weakness, that mercy is foolish, that the only way to fight darkness is with greater darkness." But what if they're right? Anakin turned to look at his Padawan, seeing the fear and doubt in her eyes. "Then we're already lost, Ahsoka. If the only way to survive is to become monsters, maybe we don't deserve to survive." "That's not an answer, Master." "No," he agreed. "It's a choice, and we've already made it." Obi-Wan approached, his robes pristine despite the tension radiating from every person on the bridge. "Anakin, a word?" They moved to a quiet corner of the bridge. Obi-Wan's expression was troubled. "I need to know," Obi-Wan said quietly, "that you're committed to this. Not just tactically, but philosophically. Because once we cross this line, we're at war with an empire that spans 1,000,000 worlds. There's no going back. You voted for this too, Master." "I did. But I've been a Jedi long enough to know that voting for something and living with its consequences are different matters entirely. I've seen the darkness in you, Anakin. I've watched you struggle with anger and fear. In this galaxy, where those emotions literally feed the powers of chaos, your internal battles become exponentially more dangerous." Anakin's jaw tightened. "You think I'm going to fall to chaos? Become like those corrupted space marines we saw? I think this galaxy will test you in ways our training never prepared you for. I think every time you give in to anger, every time you choose expedience over principle, you'll be feeding something vast and terrible. And I need to know you understand that." "I understand," Anakin said harshly. "But what's the alternative? Become like the Imperium? Lobotomize people and turn them into servitors? Sacrifice millions without hesitation? Execute anyone who questions the Emperor's will? Of course not. But there's a middle path, Anakin. Between the Imperium's brutality and Chaos's seduction. It's narrow and treacherous, but it exists. We just have to find it." Before Anakin could respond, Farseer Eldoran's hologram materialized between them. "Forgive the interruption, but the Mon K prison convoy is increasing engine power. They may have detected something. We need to act now or abort." Admiral Yularen looked to Anakin. "Your call, General." Anakin didn't hesitate. "All ships, attack pattern Delta 7. Decloak on my mark, target engines only. We need those transports intact. 3, 2, 1, mark." The Republic fleet dropped their stealth fields and surged forward. To the Imperial convoy, it must have looked like the void itself had birthed warships. 3 massive Star Destroyers appearing from nowhere, their turbo lasers already tracking targets. "Fire!" Precisely coordinated volleys of turbo laser fire lanced across the void. The Republic gunners, many enhanced by Jedi battle meditation, struck with surgical accuracy. Engine clusters exploded, maneuvering thrusters vaporized. Within 30 seconds, and all 5 prison transports were dead in space, their crews frantically transmitting distress calls. "Heretics!" the Vox channels screamed. "The false Republic attacks! All Imperial forces respond!" The Emperor. The transmission cut off as Republic jamming systems overwhelmed the Imperial communications. It wouldn't hold forever. The Imperium had backup Vox systems and astropathic communication, but it bought precious minutes. "Deploy boarding teams," Anakin commanded. "Ahsoka, you're with me. Rex, Cody, split your battalions between the 5 transports. Rules of engagement. Disable Imperial resistance with minimum casualties when possible. But don't hesitate if they won't stand down. Our priority is prisoner extraction. Sir, yes sir. The clone commanders saluted and moved to their assault positions. In the hangar bay, dozens of LAAT gunships loaded with clone troopers prepared for launch. Anakin and Ahsoka boarded the lead ship with the 501st Legion, their lightsabers ready. Through the Force, despite its corruption here, Anakin could sense the prisoners aboard the transports. Hundreds of thousands of terrified souls packed into holds designed for a fraction of that number. He could also sense the Imperial Guards, armsmen, stormtroopers, and worse. Inquisitorial acolytes whose minds burned with fanatical certainty. This was going to be bloody. The gunships launched, crossing the void under covering fire from the Star Destroyers. Eldar vessels wove between the disabled transports, their weapons picking off the few defense turrets that remained operational. It was a masterpiece of coordination. Republic firepower and Eldar precision working in concert. Anakin's gunship slammed into the side of the largest transport, breaching charges blowing through the hull armor. The 501st poured through the opening, weapons ready. They emerged into a nightmare. The holding cells were worse than anything they'd seen in the Clone Wars. Thousands of prisoners were crammed into spaces meant for hundreds, many bearing signs of torture and interrogation. Servitor conversion equipment lined the walls, machinery designed to lobotomize prisoners and turn them into the half-human machines the Imperium used for menial labor. By the Force, Ahsoka breathed, her face pale. They were going to turn them all into servitors. An Imperial stormtrooper squad rounded the corner, hell guns raised. Heretics, in the Emperor's name. Anakin's lightsaber deflected the first volley of last fire, sending the shots back at their sources. Clone troopers advanced with covering fire, their discipline and superior armor overwhelming the Imperial defenders within seconds. "Clear," Rex called out, proceeding to cell block Delta. They moved deeper into the transport, fighting through corridors that seemed designed to crush hope. Gothic architecture loomed overhead, every surface adorned with skulls and devotional inscriptions. The prisoners they passed were skeletal, hollow-eyed, broken by weeks of Imperial captivity. "Open the cells," Anakin commanded. "All of them. We're taking everyone." The clone technicians worked quickly, overriding the primitive lock systems. Cell doors hissed open, and prisoners stumbled out, many unable to believe they were being rescued. "Is this real?" one man whispered, grabbing Ahsoka's arm. "Are you real? Or is this another interrogation trick?" "It's real," Ahsoka said gently, guiding him toward the extraction point. "You're going to be okay. We're getting you out." But not everyone was grateful. "No!" a woman shrieked, pulling away from a clone trooper trying to help her. "You'll damn us all. The Inquisition will hunt us. They'll torture us for eternity. Better to die here." The fear in her voice was absolute. She'd been broken so completely that rescue terrified her more than captivity. Anakin felt rage building in his chest. Rage at the Imperium, at what they did to people, at a system so cruel it made victims fear their own freedom. His hand tightened on his lightsaber, and for a moment he felt something respond to that anger. Something vast and hungry, reaching toward him through the warp. "Master," Ahsoka's voice cut through his fury. "Stay with me. Don't give in." Anakin shook his head, forcing the anger down. The sensation retreated, but it left a coldness in his gut. Obi-Wan had been right. In this galaxy, every moment of unchecked emotion was an invitation to something terrible. "I'm fine," he said, not entirely truthfully. "Keep moving. We're running out of time." They reached the main holding area, a cavernous space packed with prisoners. 10,000 souls at least, all staring at the clone troopers and Jedi with expressions ranging from hope to terror. "This is taking too long," Rex reported over comms. "We've evacuated maybe 40,000 across all 5 transports, but there's at least 200,000 more. Sir, we need more time." "Time we don't have," Cody interjected. "Imperial reinforcements just translated in system. 6 cruisers, 2 battleships, and a Space Marine strike cruiser. ETA 4 minutes. Anakin's mind raced. 4 minutes to evacuate 200,000 people. Impossible. Unless... "Farseer Eldoran," Anakin called over the comm. "Can your webway portals transport large numbers quickly?" The Eldar's hologram appeared, his expression thoughtful. "Possibly. But using the webway to transport so many Mon-Ki souls at once would create significant warp disturbance. We would be announcing our presence to every psychic entity within light years. Do it anyway. We're not leaving these people." "Admirable. Foolish, but admirable." Eldoran's image flickered. "Very well. We will open portals directly into your ship's cargo holds. But be warned, chaos will notice, and what notices us will come hunting." Reality tore open. Inside the prison transports, shimmering portals of impossible geometry appeared, gates into the Eldar webway. Clone troopers organized the prisoners, herding them through the portals in organized streams. The wounded, the elderly, the children first. Then the able-bodied. The process was chaotic but effective. Ahsoka stood at one portal, guiding people through when she felt it. A presence approaching through the warp. Not the diffuse wrongness they'd grown accustomed to, but something focused, intelligent, and very, very interested in what they were doing. "Something's coming," she warned. Anakin felt it too. Through the Force, through the warp, something was reaching toward them, drawn by the massive psychic disturbance of the webway portals and the concentrated fear and hope of hundreds of thousands of souls. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Yularen watched his sensors with growing alarm. "Sir, we're detecting spatial anomalies forming near the convoy. Not Imperial warp translations. Something else. Something bigger. The first demon manifested inside Transport 3. It came through a tear in reality. A creature of pure warp energy given form by malevolence and hunger. Its body was impossible geometry made flesh. Its voice a sound that caused bleeding from the ears of anyone who heard it. Fresh souls. It giggled with a voice like breaking glass. Hope and fear in equal measure. Delicious. Clone troopers opened fire, their blaster bolts passing through the creature's semi-corporeal form without effect. It reached toward a group of prisoners with claws made of solidified madness. Anakin was there in an instant, his lightsaber cutting through the demon's arm. The blade, pure energy focused by kyber crystal, actually harmed the warp entity. It shrieked and recoiled. "Lightsabers, work on them," Anakin shouted. Jedi defensive formation around the portals. Across all 5 transports, Jedi ignited their blades and formed protective barriers around the evacuation points. More demons manifested, lesser creatures of chaos drawn by the psychic beacon of so many souls in transit. The Jedi fought with everything they had, their lightsabers carving through warp stuff, their Force abilities bending reality to counter the demon's impossible existence. But it wasn't enough. "Master, there's too many," Ahsoka called out, her twin blades whirling as she defended a portal. 3 demons circled her, their forms shifting and changing with nauseating fluidity. Anakin reached into the Force, drawing on power he'd never attempted before. In his home galaxy, using the Force on such a scale would have been dangerous. Here, where the Force was the warp, it was potentially suicidal. He didn't care. Power flooded through him, not the clean, focused energy of the Jedi, but something rawer, more primal. He felt that hunger again, that vast presence reaching for him, offering strength if he'd just take it. "No," Anakin growled. "I don't need your power. I have my own." He channeled the Force in a way Obi-Wan had forbidden. Pure, unfiltered emotion transformed into kinetic energy. The demons around Ahsoka exploded into warp stuff and dissipated back to the Imperium, their forms unable to sustain themselves against the focused will of a Jedi Knight who refused to yield. But the effort cost him. Anakin fell to one knee, gasping, his vision swimming. He'd used too much power too quickly, and in doing so, he'd opened himself to the warp's influence. He could hear whispers now, promises, offers of strength that would never fail, power that would protect everyone he cared about. "Get up," a voice said beside him. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood there, his lightsaber already ignited, his presence in the Force a steady anchor. "I've got you, old friend. Just breathe. Focus on my voice. Nothing else exists, just you and me and the mission." Anakin grabbed his master's hand and pulled himself up. Together, they stood back to back, their lightsabers moving in perfect synchronization. Two Jedi who'd fought side by side through the Clone Wars, now fighting against horrors their training had never anticipated. "Last transport is clear." Cody's voice crackled over comms. "All prisoners evacuated. Imperial reinforcements 60 seconds out." "All teams, emergency extraction," Yularen commanded. "Eldar, close those portals." The webway gates collapsed, and the demons, cut off from the flood of emotional energy that had sustained their manifestation, began dissipating. The Republic forces fell back to their gunships, fighting every step of the way. Anakin was the last to board, his lightsaber covering the retreat. As the gunship's doors closed, he looked back at the prison transports. Empty now, drifting in space, monuments to the Imperium's cruelty. They'd saved 300,000 souls today, and in doing so, they'd committed themselves to a war they couldn't possibly win. The Republic fleet burned through space at maximum sublight velocity. The rescued prisoners crammed into every available compartment while Imperial pursuit forces closed from behind. In the medical bays, doctors and clone medics worked frantically to treat wounds both physical and psychological. In the cargo holds, families huddled together, still unable to believe they were free. On the bridge of the Resolute, the command staff monitored their pursuers with grim efficiency. "Imperial fleet maintaining pursuit vector," the sensor officer reported. "They're not gaining, but they're not falling back either. It's like they're hurting us." "Because they are," Obi-Wan said, studying the tactical display. "Look at their formation. They're driving us toward the edge of the system, away from populated areas. They want us isolated before they engage in force." Admiral Yularen nodded. "Smart. If we fight near inhabited worlds, we might destroy Imperial infrastructure or civilian targets. Out in deep space, they can use their heaviest weapons without collateral concerns." "How long until we reach the system's edge?" Anakin asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. The demon fight had taken more out of him than he wanted to admit. Even now, he could feel a lingering wrongness, like the warp had touched him and left a stain he couldn't wash away. 3 hours at current speed," the helm officer replied. "After that, We'll be an open space with no cover and no reinforcements. Senator Organa stood at the viewport, his reflection ghostly in the transparent steel. 300,000 souls. We saved 300,000 people from torture and death. That has to count for something. It counts for us being declared enemies of the Imperium, Commander Cody said bluntly. We knew that going in, Senator. No complaints. But we need to deal with reality. We're now officially heretics, and they'll hunt us to the end of the galaxy. Ahsoka moved to stand beside the senator, her montrals drooping with fatigue. Was it worth it? Saving them, if it means condemning ourselves? Do you regret it? Organa asked gently. No. But I'm scared, Senator. I felt the darkness here. It's not like the dark side back home. It's alive, hungry, and every time we use the Force, it reaches for us. Master Anakin nearly lost himself fighting those demons. I'm fine, Snips, Anakin interjected, but his voice lacked conviction. Obi-Wan placed a hand on his former Padawan's shoulder. You're not fine. None of us are. We've been exposed to psychic assault on a scale our training never prepared us for. We need to acknowledge that and adapt, or we'll fall one by one. Before the conversation could continue, Farseer Eldoran's hologram materialized in the center of the bridge. Your pursuers are about to receive reinforcements, the Eldar warned. Lord Inquisitor Kiros has called for a full battle fleet response. 12 capital ships translating into the system's outer edge. You will be trapped between 2 Imperial forces within the hour. Can your webway portals evacuate us? Yularen asked hopefully. Not with this many souls aboard your vessels. The psychic resonance would be catastrophic. Every demon within 100 light years would converge on the disturbance. You would trade one death for another, far worse. Then what do you suggest? Anakin demanded, his frustration boiling over. We can't fight them. We can't run. What's left? Eldoran's expression remained serene, infuriatingly calm in the face of impossible odds. You negotiate. Not with Kairos. He is too rigid, too committed to your destruction. But there are other powers in this galaxy. Powers that oppose the Imperium and would see value in your continued existence. The Red Corsairs? Obi-Wan said quietly. You're suggesting we ally with the pirates and renegades who serve chaos. I suggest nothing. I merely observe that you have limited options. The Corsairs offered you alliance once. That offer likely still stands. No, Anakin said flatly. We're not allying with chaos, not after what we saw. Not after feeling what those demons were. Then you will die with your principles intact, Eldoran replied without emotion. A noble end, perhaps, but an end nonetheless. The Imperium will destroy you, consume your technology, and scatter your survivors across penal worlds where they will be worked to death or converted into servitors. Your ideals will die with you, and this galaxy will continue its descent into darkness, unchanged and unmourned. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. There has to be another way, Ahsoka insisted. There's always another way. Is there? Eldoran asked, and for the first time, something like sympathy entered his voice. You are not the first to believe that compassion and justice could survive in this galaxy. Others have tried. Civilizations that clung to enlightenment, that refused to adopt the Imperium's brutality or chaos's seduction. Do you know what happened to them? No one answered. They were consumed, every single one. Some fell to chaos corruption, others were exterminated by the Imperium for refusing to submit. A few were devoured by Xenos threats, the Tyranids, the Orcs, the Necrons. The 41st millennium does not permit idealism to survive. It is a galaxy of choices between terrible and worse, and those who seek a third option die quickly. Senator Organa turned from the viewport, his face set with determination. Then perhaps we're not meant to survive. Perhaps our purpose here is simply to show that another way existed, even if only briefly. To be a candle in the darkness before the wind snuffs us out. A poetic sentiment, Eldoran said, but futile. The Imperium has stood for 10,000 years. Your candle will not be remembered. Maybe not by them, Ahsoka said quietly, but the people we saved will remember. 300,000 souls who were destined for servitor conversion or execution. They'll remember that someone stood up to the Imperium, that someone chose compassion over pragmatism, that someone proved, even for a moment, that the Republic's ideals were more than empty words. Farseer Eldoran studied the young Togruta with his ancient eyes, and something shifted in his expression, a crack in the mask of Eldar superiority. Perhaps, he said slowly, I have underestimated you. The Eldar have survived through foresight and ruthless pragmatism. We sacrificed our idealism millennia ago. But watching you choose certain doom over compromise, it reminds me of what we once were before the fall. He paused, then made a decision. There is one option I have not mentioned. Dangerous, possibly suicidal. But it offers a chance, slim but real, of both survival and remaining true to your principles. We're listening, Obi-Wan said. The Tau Empire. They are a young race, barely aware they exist in a galaxy of horrors. They believe in something they call the greater good, a philosophy of cooperation, advancement, and integration of all species into a unified civilization. They are naive, arrogant, and woefully unprepared for the true nature of this universe. They sound perfect for us, Anakin muttered sarcastically. They also possess advanced technology, functional FTL systems that don't rely on the warp, and a military doctrine based on precision rather than attrition. More importantly, they actively seek alliances with other species. The Imperium considers them Xenos filth. Chaos largely ignores them because their souls burn dimly in the warp. They have almost no psychic presence, which shields them from the worst of Chaos corruption. Senator Organa leaned forward. You're saying the Tau Empire might accept us, an alliance based on mutual benefit rather than subjugation. I am saying it is possible. The Tau are pragmatic. They would see value in your technology and military prowess. And unlike the Imperium, they do not demand religious conversion or absolute obedience. They seek cooperation, not domination. What's the catch? Anakin asked suspiciously. The catch, Eldoran said dryly, is that Tau space is on the opposite side of the galaxy. Reaching it would require weeks of sublight travel through hostile territory, assuming we can even find a safe route. The Imperium will hunt you every step of the way. Orc empires, Tyranid hive fleets, and Chaos warbands infest the void between here and Tau space. The journey itself would test your fleet to its breaking point. But it's possible, Obi-Wan said. Difficult, dangerous, possibly suicidal, but possible. Everything in this galaxy is suicidal, Cody observed. At least this way we're moving towards something instead of just running. Admiral Yularen called up the galactic charts, incomplete data gathered from Imperial transmissions and Eldar information. The distance was staggering. Even at maximum sublight, the journey would take months. Their supplies wouldn't last half that long. We'd need to raid Imperial supply depots, Yularen said, thinking aloud. Acquire food, medicine, ammunition. That means more combat, more casualties, more risk. We'd also need to help people along the way, Ahsoka added. We can't just ignore suffering because we're focused on reaching the Tau. That's not who we are. Helping people is what got us into this situation, Anakin reminded her. And I'd make the same choice again, she shot back. Wouldn't you? Anakin looked at his Padawan. Young, idealistic, still believing that compassion mattered even in a galaxy that punished it. He thought about the prisoners they'd rescued, the families reunited in their cargo holds, the children who would grow up free instead of being turned into servitors. He thought about his mother, who died in his arms because he'd arrived too late to save her. About Padme, who believed that democracy and justice were worth fighting for, even when the galaxy seemed determined to prove her wrong. Yeah, he admitted quietly. I would. A proximity alarm interrupted the moment. On the tactical display, the Imperial reinforcements had translated into the system. 12 capital ships, 40 escorts, and 3 Space Marine strike cruisers. Lord Inquisitor Kairos' fleet had arrived, and they were moving to cut off the Republic's escape. Decision time, Yularen said grimly. We either stand and fight, which we'll lose, or we commit to Eldoran's plan and try to reach Tau space. There's also surrender, Senator Organa said quietly. I know no one wants to consider it, but we have a responsibility to the civilians aboard. 300,000 refugees who never asked to be part of a war. Do we have the right to condemn them to months of desperate flight through hostile space? You think the Imperium would treat them gently? Ahsoka asked. After we stole them from Imperial custody? I think they'd execute the leaders and absorb the rest into the Imperial system. Most would survive. Enslaved, yes. Broken, probably. But alive. That's not living, Anakin said. That's just existing. Being processed like raw materials. Sometimes, existence is the best we can hope for, Organa replied sadly. Obi-Wan moved to the center of the bridge, his presence commanding attention without effort. Let me offer a different perspective. We are the last remnant of the Galactic Republic in this timeline, possibly in this entire dimension. If we surrender, the Republic dies. Its principles, its achievements, everything it stood for, gone. Absorbed into an empire that represents everything the Republic opposed. He looked around at the assembled officers, Jedi and clone commanders. But if we run, if we fight our way across this hostile galaxy toward the possibility of alliance with the Tau, we keep the Republic alive. Not as it was, perhaps. Not with the Senate and the bureaucracy and all the complications of democracy, but as an idea, a conviction that there are principles worth fighting for, even when the whole universe says you're wrong. Pretty words, Master, Anakin said. But words don't stop macro cannons. No, but they give us a reason to try. Obi-Wan smiled faintly. I've known you since you were 9 years old, Anakin. You've always been reckless, impulsive, and far too willing to take impossible odds. But you've also never accepted that something couldn't be done just because everyone said so. The Council said you couldn't be trained. You became one of our finest knights. The Senate said the Clone Wars couldn't be won. You won battle after battle. So why stop now? Anakin looked at his former master, seeing the faith Obi-Wan still had in him despite everything. The trust that had survived disagreements, arguments, and the strain of war. He turned to the assembled command staff. Everyone who wants to surrender, speak now. No judgment. This is too important for anyone to go along unwillingly. Silence. Not a single person spoke. Clone commanders stood at attention, their loyalty unquestionable. Jedi Masters nodded their agreement. Even Senator Organa, after a long moment of internal struggle, straightened his shoulders and said, "The Republic doesn't surrender, not while there's still hope." "Then it's decided," Anakin said. "Admiral, plot a course toward Tau space. Farseer Eldoran, we'll need your navigation data and any intelligence on safe routes. Commander Cody, Rex, reorganize our security protocols. We're now protecting 300,000 civilians while fighting a running battle across hostile territory. Jedi Council, we need to figure out how to use the Force, the warp, without getting corrupted. Because if we're doing this, we're doing it right." Orders flowed across the bridge as the Republic fleet began its transformation from lost refugees to something new. A mobile civilization, carrying the last light of democracy into the darkness. On the view screen, Lord Inquisitor Kairos's fleet closed in, their macro cannons charging, their Vox channels screaming demands for surrender. The Resolute didn't answer. Instead, the Republic fleet executed a maneuver that had never been seen in the 41st millennium. A synchronized sublight jump using maximum engine burn combined with Eldar holofield misdirection. To the Imperial sensors, it appeared that the Republic vessels had simply vanished, their energy signatures dissipating into the background radiation of space. By the time the Imperials realized that they'd been tricked, the Republic fleet was light hours away, burning toward the edge of known space and whatever lay beyond. Behind them, the Imperial forces began their pursuit. Ahead of them, an entire galaxy of horrors waited. But for the first time since arriving in the 41st millennium, the Republic had something more valuable than weapons or ships or even hope. They had purpose. They would cross this nightmare galaxy. They would find the Tau Empire. They would forge a new alliance between the Republic's idealism and the Tau's greater good. And they would prove, against all odds and all logic, that compassion and justice could survive even in the darkest of times. It was an impossible dream. But the Jedi had always specialized in the impossible. And the 41st millennium was about to learn that some flames refused to be extinguished, no matter how hard the darkness tried to snuff them out. The journey that followed would become legend, whispered in the hidden corners of 1,000,000 worlds, recorded in Eldar infinity circuits, and feared by the Inquisition above all other heresies. The Republic fleet, carrying the last light of democracy through an ocean of tyranny and madness. They fought their way across 3 sectors, raiding Imperial supply convoys and liberating prisoners from penal worlds. Every rescue operation added more souls to their convoy, swelling their numbers until the false Republic became a fleet of 60 ships. A mixture of captured Imperial vessels, refugee transports, and the original Star Destroyers held together by clone engineering and desperate hope. The Jedi learned to wield the warp without succumbing to chaos, developing techniques that combined Republic philosophy with Eldar psychic discipline. They walked a razor's edge between light and darkness, using their connection to the Force to shield civilians from demonic assault, while never allowing themselves to be seduced by the power the warp offered. Clone troopers became more than soldiers. They became teachers, showing rescued civilians how to organize, how to defend themselves, how to build a society worth protecting. The Republic wasn't just running anymore. It was growing, evolving, becoming something new. Senator Organa established a provisional government, drafting a charter that balanced the Republic's democratic ideals with the harsh realities of their situation. Representatives from the rescued populations joined the decision-making process, creating a mobile democracy that defied every rule the Imperium held sacred. And through it all, Anakin Skywalker walked his own razor's edge. The darkness called to him constantly, whispers promising the power to protect everyone he cared about, to defeat every enemy, to finally be strong enough. But Ahsoka and Obi-Wan remained his anchors, reminding him that true strength came from restraint, not surrender. When the Republic fleet finally reached the borders of Tau space, they were no longer the lost travelers who'd stumbled into the 41st millennium. They were hardened, tempered by months of desperate survival. They'd lost ships, people, innocence, but they'd gained something more valuable: proof that their principles could survive contact with reality's worst nightmares. The Tau, initially suspicious of these strange humans with their impossible technology and strange philosophies, were ultimately convinced by a simple demonstration. The Republic fleet included dozens of alien species, refugees rescued from Imperial purges, Xenos who'd been given sanctuary despite the risks. Where the Imperium preached human supremacy, the Republic practiced genuine cooperation. The alliance was forged in mutual respect and shared idealism. The Tau provided sanctuary, technology, and access to their non-warp FTL systems. The Republic provided military expertise, advanced weaponry, and living proof that the Imperium's way wasn't the only way for humanity to survive. Together, they began building something unprecedented in the 41st millennium: a coalition of the hopeful, an alliance of those who refused to accept that the galaxy's only choices were brutality or damnation. The Imperium branded them the greatest heresy in 10,000 years. Inquisitor Kairos devoted his remaining years to hunting them, becoming obsessed with destroying the false republic that dared suggest compassion was possible. The ecclesiarchy preached against them in every cathedral, calling them witch lovers and Xenos sympathizers. But in the hidden places of the galaxy, in the slave pits and penal worlds, in the refugee camps and forgotten colonies, people began to whisper about the Republic, about a fleet that saved rather than condemned, about Jedi who protected instead of executing, about a democracy that treated humans and aliens as equals. Hope, that most dangerous of heresies, began to spread. And in a galaxy where there was only war, where hope had been dead for 10,000 years, even a flicker of light was revolutionary. The Republic had fallen into the 41st millennium by accident, but they would stay by choice, carrying their impossible dream forward, one battle, one rescue, one act of compassion at a time. The Imperium said their ideals would get them killed. The Republic replied, "Then we'll die as we lived, free, principled, and unbroken. And maybe, just maybe, we'll inspire others to remember what it means to truly live." In the darkness of the 41st millennium, where there was only war, the Galactic Republic had become something unexpected, a rebellion against inevitability itself. And the galaxy would never be quite the same.